Here is Art Bell.
Once again, coming up at the top of the hour, this is really going to be something, in my opinion. Jim Sparks, who is a real estate developer. You know, he did condos, he built properties, he was 34 years old, or probably is roughly 34 now. I don't know, we'll have to find out. Anyway, he has very serious, specific recollections of his abductions, plural, and what they want, why they did it, what their plans are for Earth, the Greys, and others. You're going to hear it all tonight. Should be very, very interesting. Let's go to the first-time caller line. It says, anonymous abductee. That sounds interesting. Hello?
Hello, Art.
Yes.
I would just like to say that I'm a great admirer of what you do, and it's a pleasure to talk to you.
It's a pleasure to have you. You don't want to give your name, apparently.
No, sir. No, sir. Or my location, please. But
okay. All right.
Actually, my experience goes back to my childhood. This has been going on for a long time. But
all right. I'll tell you what. We've got a very difficult phone connection. Move just a little bit away from the phone in this case, and it might clear up.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that any better?
Yeah, you bet it is. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, when I was 16 years old, this is a very uncommon fear for a 16-year-old young man, but I used to be terrified of getting out of my bed because I was convinced that there was a presence in there. I've always been obsessed with the subject of UFOs and aliens, and more recently, I've been obsessed with the subject of what the Africans refer to as the Chitauri, or what are referred to by some as the reptilians, the Anunnaki. But a recent experience that I had, a lot of these recollections appear to me almost in the form of like a memory of a dream. But in fact, what happened was I was abducted, and I was told that this has been happening repeatedly through the...
Again, back away from the phone. My question for you, I want to stop you and ask a question anyway, so get further away from the phone. Do you think that you had a screen memory, in essence, installed? It's kind of a false memory of what happened?
I think that would definitely be a possibility. But I was told that I was programmed, and I was told that I was programmed to kill myself and destroy myself in different ways. And that
oh, my God, why?
Well, I think that they fear some kind of power that I contain, that I possess. But among many others on the planet right now, I believe that I possess the same power, this ability to change people's perspectives on things. And because of this, they basically hunt these people down and repeatedly abduct them throughout various points in their life. And I believe that I'm one of them, one of many that I've been reading about in recent years as well.
This began when? This began how many years ago?
Well, I began having fears of this and feelings as though I was being abducted from the time that I was about, 7 years old. And 6
and your age now?
And I am 22 years old now.
22 years. Can you describe these creatures?
Well, they are the classic depiction of what some refer to as the Greys. But I believe these Greys to be no more than drones, worker bees for a higher, more intelligent, more sophisticated race. I believe that essentially they're clones. That's why they lack reproductive organs as well. And in traditional depictions of them, they lack reproductive organs. I believe that they wear suits, and that what appears to be a gray skin is not actually a gray skin, but it is actually a suit to cover up their true form, which is more like the form of what we would call a reptilian, or, what some refer to as the Anunnaki.
How clear are your recollections of what was done to you?
Some are blurred and some are very vivid, Like as I said, some come to me almost, they seem like a memory of a dream, a very vivid dream.
All right, Mr. Anonymous, let me ask you this. You say it's blurred with the possibility of a dream. How much is there any possibility at all that all of this was a dream or a hallucination or something like that? Or are you certain it was real?
I'm certain that most accounts of this were absolutely 100% genuine. And
your accounts of this, not others.
No. I'm talking about my personal experiences.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of at least some, but I'm saying it's not like I wake up and remember a dream. It's like flashes of images come to me, and over the years, through my research, it's like I'm almost deprogramming myself and realizing certain things and uncovering certain truths. When I uncover things that I already felt, and I hear about other people's opinions on things that I've already felt and intuitively come to as an understanding, then I begin to have a realization that I'm not the only one who's experiencing these things this way.
Oh, you certainly are not. Listen, the guest I've got coming up tonight, in order to recall everything or to get every bit of information, went to John Mack, the renowned fellow who regresses people like yourself. Have you done anything like that? Have you gone to any researchers?
No, because to put it simply, I think that the human mind is a very fragile thing, and I don't like people tampering with mine. And if there are indeed outside alien forces tampering with it, that's enough. You know, I have enough problem keeping my mind balanced as it is. So, especially with a certain knowledge of certain things that are happening in the world and going to happen to Earth. Like
what, please?
Well, of course, you've heard of the idea of 2012, which will indeed happen when it's supposed to happen. The idea of martial law being enforced, complete global
Well, back up.
control.
What's going to happen in 2012? I mean, I don't know of anything specifically said to occur then. It's the end of the Mayan calendar. Maybe they just got sick of making calendars. What do you know about what will occur then?
Well, some propose that I know that there will be a great cataclysmic shift, which will bring about like some kind of ascension for some humans that are ready for it, and some will have to be left behind. This is a shift in dimension for the Earth. And in fact, from my understanding of it, from the information that I've received through opening myself up to it, basically what will happen is there's a planet where these beings, these reptilians, have been harvesting all these humans and keeping them there. When this change comes about, these beings will actually become the people of ancient Earth, and they will start everything all over again, because essentially understanding the concept of time being one, past, present, and future being one, then essentially time travel is pretty simple when you don't look to any device to help you to travel through time, and you only rely on your astral body, so to speak. Now, if time is collapsing in on itself and the past, the present, and the future are all one, then this is not necessarily a totally ludicrous hypothesis. It's a definite possibility that these people will come back and become the people of ancient Earth, and they will start everything all over again, and that it's just this grand cycle that doesn't stop.
All right. What percentage of your abductions do you think you recall?
I would say probably about 15 to 20%. I'm sure it's happened so many times that I can't recall, and I've been lucky enough to recall some of them, but I think most of the time the slate is wiped clean, and I'm not intended to remember. All
right. Well, listen, thank you very much. The difference with the guest I have coming on tonight, one, he has no reason, no motivation to be telling the story he's going to tell at all tonight. He's financially well off. He was successful in business, and then, boom, all of this came out of nowhere. And the other difference is he recalls vividly about 90% of the abduction procedures that were done and what the creatures look like and all the rest of it. So it should be a very instructive evening. Wildcard line. I say, that's right. I've done it again. See, I get wound up with what I'm doing. All right. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Very quickly, let's go to Sedona, Arizona. We've got another abductee. Keith, you're on the air.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Art. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. I've seen the Greys face-to-face, and I got so many stories I hardly know where to start. But the Greys I experienced were a hive mind. They were not individuals, and that's why they're psychically so powerful. And we saw a jet fighter chase a glowing orb across the sky, black helicopters, Russian troops, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Do you remember much about the craft?
Yes, I do. I could tell you all about it. I was beamed up in a blue beam up to a small scout ship, taken up into a large mothership, which appeared to be cigar-shaped, and there were mantis-like beings overseeing it. I've seen the reptilians too, but in my particular case, it was the grays with the mantis beings standing much taller over them, and they put a implant in me, and I've recovered this after like 20 years. It took me 20 years of regression. I had hypnotic regression to help me recover the memories of it.
Where was the implant in your body?
It was in my lungs, actually. It was what we've discussed. What the best of my knowledge is that we're studying heart and lung function.
Okay.
And also,
did you know what these creatures ultimately, what their motivation for taking human beings is?
Well, it's kind of like a harvest. They're harvesting energy, and the motivation for them is they don't have emotions, and that's part of what they're studying with us. And also, I tend to think they're not having their race is kind of ending, and they're trying to rejuvenate their race with our DNA.
Well, that's a common thought, certainly. I wish I had more time to spend with you. We've got a break coming up. This is going to be very interesting. Our guest coming up, Jim Sparks, lives in the Nevada desert, my old stomping grounds. He works as a debt consultant. Born in 1954, he spent his early years in Florida. Sparks studied real estate at a community college in Florida and then began working for a major condominium firm who eventually moved him to Houston in 1979. After 12 years, he started J&J Properties, which is a natural land development company, which mostly operated in North Carolina. Sparks was now able to use his own philosophy and he actually would not allow removing more trees than necessary from each lot. So I guess he's ecologically sensitive. At 34 years old, Sparks was happily married and financially successful when his experiences with otherworldly beings began. Life as he knew it began to unravel with these unexplained incidents. Now, 18 years later, Sparks has moved from resistor to cooperator and is sharing his experiences with others, tonight with you. A conservationist at heart, Sparks encourages others to support their work being done by the Nature Conservancy to help save critical acreage in the Atlantic forest region of South America. In a moment, a very unusual individual is going to take us in detail through his experiences. Coming up, Jim Sparks. As promised, Jim Sparks. Jim, welcome to Coast AM.
Hey, it's great to be here, Art. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I wonder why somebody of your stature, somebody who has been very financially successful, even if you had all of these experiences, which I don't doubt that you've had in such great detail, we're going to hear so much tonight, would have the cojones to come on a national radio program and talk about it.
Well, it's been an evolving situation. In the beginning years, well, I'm straightforward, logical, down to earth, honest, and in the early years, meaning starting in '88, these experiences were abrupt and in my face and without warning, just like overnight, and particularly the first 6 years, I had nothing but loathing and hate. And
so you did not talk publicly then about this?
No, I didn't even know things like this existed. I wasn't really tuned into any of the abduction experiences of other people. It wasn't me. Now, sure, I felt like perhaps there were visitors from other planets, because considering the size of the cosmos and how many stars are out there and planets rotating around them, that it was possible something can come by. But the visits we get and these extraterrestrials and the abductions of this magnitude and involving tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. No, I didn't have any clue anything like that was around.
Okay. How old are you now, Jim?
52.
52. These experiences began when you were how old?
34. 18 years ago. 18 years ago, almost to the month, actually, as we speak.
Okay, then let's go back to the very beginning, the first time, perhaps if you recall, that it happened to you.
Well, in the beginning, it was around mid-'88, and my experiences were not too unlike what most abductees talk about, which were dreamlike. But with me, it started that way, and it was a reoccurring dream, and it was the same one around mid-'88 that went on. It happened the same way over and over again. I would be sleeping. Something would wake me up, but as far as I was concerned, this was a dream. Something or some things would be waking me up, walking me from my bedroom down the hallway into the guest room, and we had at the time a floor-level window in the guest room, and they would walk me right through it. We'd go across the lawn into the woods, and then I had no memory at that time of what went on in the woods. And then in this so-called dream, I would be walked back through the window and back into the bedroom and put back in bed. This went on for a few months, and then one evening...
Jim, you thought you were having dreams. You thought, at this point, you thought they were dreams, right?
Just dreams, and didn't think much more of it, except that I kept having the same one over and over again, which was not normal for me. Yeah, this is odd, right?
Yeah.
And but the way it progressed was one night it jumped from one extreme to the other. So there was a night where it was extreme, meaning that I became, as these things came and woke me up, I found myself standing, and I was dead awake conscious, and then I would black out for a second, then I would be conscious for a second, but just as conscious as you and I are talking, and it was very vivid, and it was more real than it was a dream to me. Walking down the hallway, I could feel my feet on the carpet. I could see as we went into the guest bedroom and walked through the window. It was like I blacked out just as we came to the window. Then I came conscious again as we walked through it, and I was in the yard, and I felt the cold grass on my feet. But what proved to me something was really going on is when we had came back through the window after the experience in the woods, which at the time I had no idea what was going on. I had no memory of that. But coming back through, when I walked through the lawn coming back, we had these bushes in our yard, and they had these thousands of little flowers on them. I think they're called honeysuckle flowers, and they would stick to your feet.
Right.
And coming through the window and going back into the bedroom, when I woke up the next morning, I said, man, this thing was just like it really happened. And so now I'm awake. I get up. This is normal. I went into the guest bedroom, and what I saw really astounded me, scared me, actually, because I could see my footprints in the lawn, and I could see half of my heel was in the lawn, and then the toes were embedded in the carpet, as if the window wasn't there, and the honeysuckle flowers were in the footprints in the carpet in my guest bedroom. I could see them with the honeysuckle flowers embedded in the carpet as I walked through the bedroom back into the hallway.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and it was impossible. And I said, how can this be possible? There's a window here, and it had drapes, it had blinds, it had all of that. So that was like the first shock of something is really happening here that I couldn't explain.
Well, I was going to ask how you separate the dream from the chaff, and you sure just told me. At that point, I would think that a deep fear would sort of start to set in when you realize that, God, these weren't dreams. This is really happening.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. So it's real, and it shook me up. It kept me from operating properly during the day, but I was functioning normally, but I was still keeping it to myself. So at that point, which I didn't mention, I took I didn't mention anything to my wife. I didn't say anything to anybody. I just took the vacuum cleaner and got every little leaf, every little blade of grass, all the honeysuckle flowers, and said, the next time this happens, I'm going to come into this room and see. I now know that they were progressively adapting me to what was about to happen, which was extreme, which really changed. That's called being pulled, what I call being pulled the easy way. Whenever a craft is on the ground or landed, they use a technology to escort you to the craft by walking you to it, but you can walk through solid objects. They create some kind of field. It's technology, and you walk through walls and things of that nature. But again, I had that experience, and I went into that room, and again, then I could see the footprints, and I could see the honeysuckle flowers. But what really shook me up and really changed my life, messed it up for a solid 18 months to 6 years, which I'll get into, which was real. It was traumatizing. It was horror-filled. The MO at that time was isolation, fear, confusion. I felt like I had been abducted into a war that I didn't even know existed. I called it like an alien boot camp, and I can get into that. And all that stuff was terrible the first 6 years, and then as the experiences evolved, it got pretty neat. But it was adapting to creatures intelligent creatures that are not human. And
actually, I really would like to hear what you called alien boot camp, the beginning of this, the way they, well, you know, I went through U.S. Air Force boot camp, and of course, what they're doing is exactly that, separating the wheat from the chaff, those who will make it from those who will not, those who are Air Force material from those who are not.
Right.
And they're teaching you to respond without thinking to orders. In other words, you get an order, you just do it. You don't think about it, you just do it. And that's what boot camp's all about. Well,
it's very similar. And see, I didn't even have any understanding of that. And but it was to break you down, and it did just that. And it. Again,
using what kind of methods? How did they do what they did?
Well, the first thing was that was going the easy way. When a craft is in flight or in motion, and they want to pull matter, being whatever it may be, like cows or humans or whatever it might be. In my case, me. That's a whole different world. The first thing that happens is you hear a sound that's like a whipping, whirling sound. It starts off at a low RPM, and it starts getting louder, like somebody has a whip, like a when it just gets louder and louder.
Right.
And you're hearing it in your head, and then in your torso, where the lower part of your torso, you feel like an energy coming up towards your chest, and when this energy reaches your heart starts racing like 1,000 beats per minute is what it seems like, and I mean it's just almost racing out of your chest. And then you get this almost like a roller coaster sensation, like G-forces like 100 times, but you don't get the sensation that you're going up. You feel the sensation of you're being pulled down like you're going down a roller coaster, only 100 times faster, and you're screaming inside your head, "I don't want to die, I don't want to die," and your heart's racing, and this is going on, and then you black out. That was like the first. That went from the nice, easy walking through the window to that. And here's where I was for 6 years. When I awoken from the first time that I blacked out, I was in the same room, dimly lighted. Light was coming from nowhere but yet everywhere. You couldn't pinpoint where the light was. Paralyzed. I sat on something that would be like a bench. And in front of me was something that looked like a table with a screen on it or a monitor on it. Now, this is 18, 20 years ago, and I wasn't into computers. I didn't even know anything about those things in that day. I wasn't into that.
Right.
And then in front of me was a wall about 4 or 6 feet in front of me, and it had another huge monitor in it. And I was paralyzed except for the fact that I could move my head up and down to look at the wall screen and to look at the monitor or screen on the table, and I could move my right hand, but not my arm, against the table. And what later proceeded was I would use my right forefinger to like an Etch-a-Sketch, like when you were a kid, when you used to do that, and it would leave a trail or a trace.
Sure.
Only it would show up either on the wall screen. I called it wall screens. Now I know they're monitors these days.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask, if you could make out what was on the monitors.
That was that's how they started me off. As a matter of fact, see, there's no social skills with these guys, and they're completely telepathic. They use screen imaging to create things in your mind to make you think you're somewhere else or you're doing something else. All their technology is thought activated. They travel dimensions, they travel time, and it's all technology. And I hung on to that these aren't devils, these aren't this. I kept a logical and frame of reference as I possibly could. But right at the beginning, it wasn't, would you like to be here, or we're this or we're that. As a matter of fact, my peripheral vision for many months at the beginning was almost completely gone, so I couldn't see who my captives were, or my,
Jim, I would like to ask how you even kept your sanity, and the reason I ask that is your analogy, going back to Air Force boot camp in San Antonio, there were a lot of people after 3 or 4 days of this, they were screaming, me included, "Mommy, I want to go home. What the hell have I done to myself?" That was, with a good Earth-like, though harsh, frame of reference. You had no frame of reference.
None.
How did you keep from going bananas?
Hate and anger. And I think it's what kept 90%, it got up to 90% of retaining everything in my face that went on. Total hate, and I should say total anger and total hate, intense hate and intense anger. I screamed. Well, some of the words I use, naturally I can't use on the air. Where am I, and who are you, and why am I here? And I couldn't even figure out for a second why. But
were you able to vocalize all of this? In other words, if you shouted invectives or whatever, you could actually make a sound, and you could hear that you were making a sound.
Yes, and then my tormentors at the time, I guess you could call them that, would paralyze my vocal cords too. If in their whatever view enough was enough. But they were really odd. Again, they have no social skills, at least at that time. And now I know they're grays. I couldn't even see what my captives were at the time. It took a few months before I could catch them in my peripheral vision, and they were these. Well, what I now know, there's what I call the true grays, which are biological beings. And then there's the worker beings, which I think a lot of people talk about, and they're half biological and they're half robotic, and those are the short ones with the big heads and the giant eyes. I think the eyes are used primarily to soak in any kind of energy source for them to move around, almost kind of like solar panels, so to speak. They take. All right.
At some point, Jim, you went to a very important person. You went to Dr. Mack to help you in dealing with these people, with the creatures.
Correct. That was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Proceed. I just wanted to find out how Dr. Mack dealt with you and how he helped you.
Well, Dr. Mack came in. I came into his picture. He came into mine. Oh, gosh. I could be off a couple years more or less because this is 18 years of this. Right around 94. So that would have been 88 and 6. That would have been like 6 years later. See, because for 6 years I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything. But, well, I can tell you about, you were asking me how they made me do things. It was punishment, reward. It was real simple, but I can get into that in a minute.
Okay.
But Dr. Mack came into the picture through, I went to my first abductee support group meeting in right around 95, I think it was, 6-7 years later. And, again, I didn't even know these things were around. And the then director of MUFON for Rhode Island, David Rubian, happened to be at the meeting because he wintered in Florida, and he was a friend of Dr. Mack's. And, he was listening, of course, to some of the stories and the experiences, and through David is how I met John. What was really cool about John Mack was just so special.
Yes.
He was the pioneer and everything. He had to take the rotten eggs and tomatoes thrown at him, and
I know.
for what he was.
I did a good solid 12, 13 interviews with John Mack, Jim, so I knew him very well.
Well, I got pretty close with him, too. I was really lucky. But what John enjoyed with myself was the fact that the experiences were conscious. He was writing Passport to the Cosmos at the time. I was able to fill in some gaps where people, don't have the memory or they don't retain the memory.
Right.
Because none of the experiences did come from regression, although I think regression is good. But in my case, it never was necessary. And so a relationship flowered at that point.
Well, was an amazing man. Punishment, you mentioned they conditioned you with punishment and then some sort of reward, I suppose, when they were what they considered to be good. So when we get back from the break, Jim, let's go into that a little bit. We've got so much to take care of tonight, so much information. Stay right where you are. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you this was going to be a very special night. Jim Sparks is indeed a very special guy. And he's going to recount to you in great detail, because he remembers in great detail years and years of abductions, what they want, what they did, and where we're going. I'm Art Bell. I sure wish some of those PhDs that I interview all the time, some of those very reputable scientists, could listen to what Jim Sparks is saying tonight. Those fellows who say, well, give me some proof. As you listen to Jim Sparks, I think you would conclude, as I think they would conclude, that it would be worth a few investigative dollars to look into this, because it's really happening. It's going to unfold before your ears this night. Jim Sparks is my guest. I'm Art Bell. In basic training, having a drill sergeant right up in your face with invective and screaming is quite enough to terrify the hell out of a basic recruit, I can assure you. Jim, you said you went through a kind of basic, and they gave you punishment and reward of what sort?
Well, from the very first moment on board, and particularly, again, the first 18 months were like this, and then it tapered off a little, but again, after 6 years, I kind of look forward to telling you what happened after that. But from the very first day, the letter A, just the letter A appeared on that on the screen in front of me that I was mentioning.
Yes.
And then an equivalent, which I thought was an alien language. Well, I later now know more what that is, but I didn't know what was going on at the time. To the letter A was next to it, and they wanted me to trace that equivalent of A with my right forefinger on that table in front of me. And so there would be like a demonstration of how to do the A, which it was one stroke to the right, one stroke to the left, one stroke to the right. Mm-hmm. And then I yelled out, no. And, of course, who are you? Why are you doing this? And so one thing I've learned about them, and for a fact, they can't stand questions, and I can get into that later. Just you don't ask them questions; they tell you when they want you to know something, and that's just all there is to it. And there's no other way around it. But anyhow, I screamed and yelled, "No, I won't do that." Well, immediately after that, the air pressure in the room increased with a thump, like thump, and there was pain in my ears, and I just went, "Ow!" And then again, A, and I could hear this in my brain. And I didn't hear it in my ears. I heard just the word A, and I went, no. And then the air pressure increased again until the pain was even more. And every time I refused to do it, it just kept stepping up in levels and levels and levels until it got to the point where I couldn't take it. And I did the strokes for the letter A. And then all of a sudden, a sense of euphoria. Where you just feel no pain, you feel real comfortable, and that made me real mad. See, I was really hard. I said, I know what you're doing, It's like I'm some laboratory mouse here, mouth,
Yeah.
have a piece of cheese, and I'm not going to enjoy this euphoria. But and it was painful, it hurt, and then, boom, I would be back home, and, well, there's just so much to say in that regard.
It sounds kind of like a basic intelligence test, Jim, which would indicate to me that if they were only trying to get you to trace an A, obviously they wanted to see if you could do it, or they wanted to see if they could force you to do it, or I'm not sure what the motivation of this was, but it could have been just a very basic intelligence test, which would indicate they didn't know a whole lot about us at that point.
They didn't, and what they were actually teaching, which I was resistant to it at the time, and you're right, they didn't. They just didn't. They just have their way of thinking, and we're human, and they're not. It's just that simple. But it turned out to be something where you can take 20 pages of text in a symbol the size of a quarter. Look, they could show it to you, and you could absorb all the text and know exactly what it was. That's what all this was leading to. But it took years for me because I wouldn't cooperate with them. And then, I would have the abductions were happening 2-3 times a week after week, month after month. I remember, I ran, and I'm straightforward and honest, and everybody knew me that way, and I ran to the church with it, and they said, oh, gee, this is demonic. My family thought I lost it. My friends were going like, what is with you, Jim? But I stuck to my story, and I did for a long time, several months in the beginning, until I realized that, hey, and I even tried to run from these guys. I kept my mouth shut about it. I realized that just people weren't going to believe me, and that was it. And so I just tolerated all this stuff for many years just on my own.
Jim, there are a lot of abductees that have tried different schemes to prevent being abducted, putting video cameras up, putting alarm systems in, and on and on and on and on. Did you try any of that?
Well, I was kind of like a cave. I had the sort of like the caveman approach. Again, I was just so filled with hatred. When I realized how people reacted to this, it really wasn't in me to try and prove it was true at that point. What I wanted to do was make it stop. So I did things which I laugh about, but like I tried different things because they create some kind of field which makes them walk through walls. They can just do it. I stuck with the fact this is technology. It's nothing else. Don't sway from it, Jim. Don't think they're anything other than some advanced creatures with high technology. So I tried things like I would, at the time, as you said, I was in Houston, so I would check out a hotel room in the middle of a super large hotel in the middle of downtown Houston, thinking, okay, I can be here and they won't get me, and they would get me. I drove hundreds of miles, and I'd check out motels to try and get away, and they'd find me there. And then I would go from state to state. Needless to say, it messed up my business pretty good. It didn't do wonders for my marriage at the time. And, of course,
did your marriage hold together?
No, actually it didn't. It did after things got better with the interaction with them, but our marriage, for other reasons, did not. So,
how about business, Jim?
It went in those early years. I had a buffer because I was the type that worked, all the time, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day at what I was doing, and so I had a pretty good buffer, and so I was able to rely on that for several years afterwards, and then it went down, and then it went back up, and then, as I adjusted to all of this, things were a lot better.
Okay, so this boot camp, Jim, was in order to get you to be absorbing large amounts of information very quickly. Is that what it was all about?
Well, as it turned out, that's just one of the things, and but the reward and punishment sessions became a little more interesting, even though I was highly resistant for a long period of time. But then the rewards would be things like they would answer a question. So if I cooperated, after the letter A came the letter B, and I just couldn't believe it. It was weeks or a month or more before that's how resistant I was to not cooperating, to where you finally went to the letter B, then it went to the letter C, all the way through. No Q's and no Z's. Don't ask me why. And also a number system that was based on a 6 base, and the symbols for all of that. And but I could, at the end of, if I cooperated, and it got it started to get kind of cool because if I cooperated, I got to go home faster. That was one thing. Then I could ask a question and get an answer, something they don't like. One thing about us humans is we just can't help ourselves. We're always going to ask questions. Who are you? Where are you from? Why you're here? Why you this?
And are those the initial questions you did ask?
As I started to understand their nature, I would ask basic questions, but I started seeing what they were like and what other people would be around them and what they were so used to hearing or absorbing. I don't know if they hear. And so I would plan questions based around something other than that what perhaps they wouldn't expect. And I think that it drew a lot of attention to me at times. Now, there are some other parts of the reward sessions were that I could play with some gizmos, meaning that, is it okay for me to go to that?
It is, but just before you do, if you wouldn't mind, you would ask a question vocally. They would give you an answer, which I presume was given to you mentally?
Yes, it was always telepathic. They never spoke.
Okay, can you give me a couple of examples of questions and answers you got?
Well, who are you?
Uh-huh.
Who are you? And I asked that and screamed that and yelled that for months and months and months and months. And they would take these symbols, these letters, and then they had a cursive way of doing it, and then I was starting to put together like a way to communicate with them through the symbols, and that's what they wanted me to do. Instead of the telepathic stuff, they wanted me to sketch and think the symbols to talk to them, and then that's how they would talk back to me with the symbols. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so if I was a good laboratory mouse and I cooperated, then they would answer. So one particular evening, I knew I had done well with some ambiguous puzzles and symbols, and I could tell that they have no emotions. If they do, they're not emotions that I can understand. But I could sense that they were pleased with it, so I screamed out, who are you? And, of course, I gave them a snide answer after they told me because I didn't like the answer. And it was so corny, but they said, we're star people.
Okay.
Star people. That's what I said. Star people? You're star people? I said, I'm a people. You're not a people. You can't. The star part I can believe, but people, you are not people. So I still wasn't embracing alien ways, clearly at that point. So they referred themselves as star people. Another time during the course of that first 6 years, bearing in mind while all of this was going on, Art, they would do some bizarre emotional experiments to see how I would react to things like killing in particular. Oh. And also semen extraction was always part of an abduction experience. It's like, you couldn't go home without, donating semen, whether you liked it or not. So that was a constant with this also.
There are many, 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 including my best friend Whitley Strieber, of course, who tearfully related that. He was very embarrassed by it. And so I guess it seems to be integral to the abduction experience, and there are many people who draw an inference from that the motivation behind all of this is somehow genetic, that it's related to genetics.
Well, yes, it is, and different types of ETs or extraterrestrials or grays, in my experience, better than 90% of my contact or experience have been with what are commonly referred to as grays. 5, maybe 3 or 5%, or a little more than that, have been what are scaled beings, and people commonly refer to them as reptilians. But the genetic part is there in their agenda. But I observed, and these worker beings kind of intrigued me because those are the ones with the huge eyes. Now the grays have bigger eyes than we do, but not nearly as huge as these workers. And I surmised over the years that these worker beings were created. They were half biological and half robotic, and I surmise that the biological material was coming from us. They were actually farming us for raw materials to make those things. That's at least one part of what they do.
All right, you moved from the punishment-reward phase where you were totally resisting and very, very obviously angry to a point where you began to cooperate with them. Is that fair?
Because, yeah, that's right, because I knew I could always go home quicker. And that, you could call that part of the reward thing. So the more I cooperated, the faster it would get over with, and I can go home. So yes, that's fair.
How hard was it after an experience to make the transition? I mean, my God, every day you had to come back. You said it was happening 2 or 3 times a week. You had to come back, and there was your wife, there was your business, there was the real world, and you had to make the transition back to the real world. How hard was that?
It wasn't a good transition in those first 6 years at all. And I relative to the whole, when you look at the big picture, yeah, I handled it well, but relative to those first few years, no. I wasn't adjusting, and I was, like I said, I had a buffer there where I could. I had one business where I had a partnership with a gentleman and his wife, and they were trusted friends, and they ran that aspect of the business because I couldn't even. That was in North Carolina, where I couldn't even become part of it anymore. Where it consumed me, and and I went through all kinds of phases with this because I never was one for alcohol or drugs or anything like that. Sure, I would socially drink and things, but I started drinking, and it was not like me to drink like I was, and I got to the point where I looked like I stopped eating. I lost, I dropped between 35 and 50 pounds, and I was only at the time like 180, and I dropped 35 to 50 pounds from that. I looked like at my lowest point, I looked like Howard Hughes. I think I kind of joke about it, but like Howard Hughes did with the fingernails and the long hair, and not shaven and all that. And I woke up one morning, and I said to myself, "Man," I looked at myself and said, "No. That's it. I am not going to let this happen. I'm not going to let them do this to me. That's it." And I brought myself right back up almost immediately within a few weeks or a month, and didn't turn to anything to numb me. In other words, to try, because the more I numbed to myself, the harder it was on myself. If you follow what I'm saying. So no, it wasn't good. It was awful. It was terrible. It was traumatic, and again, the MO with this thing is isolation, so I was isolated. Nobody believed me.
Jim, what did you do? Did you first go to your wife with this?
Well, I touch on this a bit because I learned real quick that they had an involvement with her, because from time to time I would see her in an abduction experience way in the back of the room or in the corner somewhere, and it would be a glimpse. But she was, at the time, when I would mention it to her or confront it with her, and it fascinates me today when I think about it, and she won't argue it, but she gave these like program responses to any of my questions. And now this is the woman I lived with, this is the one I slept with, this is the one I was in love with, this is the one I held, this is the one that knew me intimately. And I would look at her face and say, "Teresa, I know you remember seeing me." And then she would be herself for like a brief moment. It's kind of scary what I'm telling you. I mean, things did get a lot better with this, but this is the stuff at the beginning. And she'd look at me like herself and start to say, "Yeah, I saw." And then she would stop, and then she would give me the same like programmed responses, I wouldn't know about anything like that. She would even talk funny. And if I pressed it further, my life became more difficult than it was. So she became unlike herself. And, everybody has their moods and their ways, and, they're up, they're down, and so forth. But the downs were not like her. And so I learned pretty quick, hey, her way of coping is it's not happening.
Denial.
Denial. And there was, I think, a little bit of, programming there, so to speak, from them. And again, Art, the idea was, and as you say, I like the way you put it with your experience in the service and how boot camp works, and you kind of put even more of a clarity for me on it, because it was to keep me isolated, keep me in fear, and keep me in confusion, in a sense, to mold me to the way they are, because they are different. They are certainly not like us, and that was all part of the way that thing worked.
Okay, then you went to others as well. I assume that you went to some business colleagues or friends or your family, or...
Yeah. I mean, I laugh about it now, and they just said, what really appalled me, I think, and what really hurt me the most was anybody that knew me knew that I was straight, and I tell it like it is and how I see it, and and so on, and I don't make things up. And it was just, they reacted in a way that was, I couldn't believe. They just wouldn't take any of it as being possible.
Right.
And then, so it was my brother, I believe. Was it my brother who said to me, "You know something, Jim?" He said, "As long as you don't talk about this stuff, you're perfectly fine." And that's how everybody sees you. So that was something that I took to heart, and I stopped talking about it to my family. Well, of course, now they see it completely different. And Jim was okay, just as long as he didn't talk about this stuff.
All right, Jim, hold it right there. We're already at the top of the hour. Boy, this is flying by. Jim Sparks is my guest. He's an abductee, obviously a very honest one, and one who remembers just about everything. Listen to what's going to unfold. I'm Art Bell. Here I am. Good day, everybody. The winds now from Typhoon Uthor, which is a Category 3 typhoon, passing through the Visayas area of the Philippines, just to the south of us, roughly exactly south of us right now. It's coming down in sheets here, as we have one of the best shows we've ever had, probably the best abductee program we've ever had. His name is Jim Sparks. He was a real estate developer, investor, really a money guy, a big business guy, and then the abductions began. Years and years of abductions. To the best of my knowledge, it still goes on. We will continue to explore with Jim in a moment. Once again, Jim Sparks. Jim, welcome back. You got an answer from these beings that they were, quote, the star people, unquote. Now, did you ever learn anything different? Was star people the one and only answer you got, or did it ever get more specific?
Well, again, Art, over the years, I even as the reward sessions evolved, I learned that there were very few times that I can get a direct answer to questions, and it was whatever really they wanted me to know, and whenever they felt it was time for me to know, I would get those kind of answers. Another time I had asked, kind of jumping around, but I had asked during a vigorous period of an experience with cooperating with what they wanted me to do. I asked if I could go. If I wanted to, could I travel with you guys? To put it simple. And there was a long pause, and then the answer was yes.
Oh.
And then I didn't respond fast because I don't. I've learned to certain degrees how to deal with them. And then I said, well, if I didn't like it, could I come back? And then there was another long pause, and the answer was no.
Oh.
And I said, okay, I think I'll just stay here. You know what went through my mind was silly things, but it means a lot when you think about it, because it's really cool to be human. And the smell of cut grass, a hot dog. No more cold beers. Once you start seeing that kind of reality and thinking, well, gee, I can't come back here, and not really being told what to expect, I just felt like, no, I don't. I guess I'll be fine here.
No more football. Yeah. All right. You wrote a book called The Keepers. How long ago did you write this book?
I started it almost 10 years ago, and it went to. It took a couple of years to write, and it took about a year editing, and then I wasn't really strong about trying to move it, and Random House bought it, and they held it for 3 years, but they never published it, and then John, as in John Mack, introduced the book here a couple of years ago or the manuscript at the time, to Granite Publishing, and they're the ones that have it now, and it's published.
Maybe it was good for you. I've written books, and it's very cathartic to read a book, to write a book. It really is, to go back over the experiences. It's very cathartic. It's good for you. Anyway, you explained that you were trained by the Greys and have had dealings with the reptilians. Now, whatever you can, just for a moment, stop and describe these two creatures and the differences between them and what you think of them, I'd appreciate.
Sure. The Greys are non-emotional. They're, like I mentioned earlier, they're totally telepathic. They think at least 100 times faster. They process information 100 times faster. That's another reason why it's difficult. You just can't have a conversation with them. The Greys also, one thing about a human being is that we all have our false faces or our facades, which is perfectly normal, meaning that if I first meet you, I don't know you, and I put up sort of a fence until I get to know you, and then I kind of let my guard down if I feel comfortable. Well, with these guys, when they communicate, they rip right through it, and they know everything about you. And I'm talking about the way the Greys are, and then I'm going to talk about the reptilians, because I think the reptilians get a bad rap. Am I okay with the details so far?
Sure.
Okay. One thing about the Greys also is they radiate an energy that is miserably and stinkingly, I guess, miserably uncomfortable. I've also learned that energy that they radiate, the higher the rank or the higher the authority, the more miserable the energy feels, meaning that if they're 50 or 80 feet away, your spine starts to stiffen up, your breathing starts to become fast as they draw closer to you. And this is a natural thing with them, or it's a natural thing that's amplified by technology as a defense mechanism. So the reason I'm telling you this to define the difference in reptilians, because they're almost like us in a sense. But going back to that, the closer they get to you, and again, depending on rank and power, that expresses authority. Your body starts to shut down first. The first thing, your heart races, your breathing gets fast and rapid, you sweat, and then all the glands in your brain that drop all those chemicals to make fear, adrenaline, and all that stuff just dumps into your body.
All right.
And then in a lot of cases, now you're paralyzed as they get closer, then you'll black out. It took me years to overcome that sensation, and the best way to describe it would be, it's not from this world. And
okay, is that the only way that you were able to discern the difference in social status or rank, if you will, among the Greys?
Absolutely, because we're talking many hundreds of abductions. I know it sounds like a lot and unreal, but it is. And different ways to get one to cooperate was a lower-ranking one would do his methods with his horrible feeling energy, and if you resisted it, a more authoritative figure would come in, and even as that one was entering the room, the next thing you know, your heart felt like it was going to stop, your breathing was short, your back stiffened up, you were scared to death, and as he got closer, you could tell the rest of them were in submission to this individual. And then he would, they like to look over your head, because again, for those first 6 years I was always sitting on this thing, and they would look over usually my right-hand side of my head, and as they would stare over my head, it made it nearly impossible by what they were radiating to resist whatever they wanted to be done as this thing progressed. And then they'd walk out of the room. They'd come in, make their entrance, get it done, and walk out, and then the lower-ranking ones would go about whatever task that they wanted to do with you.
Okay, Jim, was there any difference? I think most of the audience is familiar with the classic picture or descriptive, visual descriptive of the Greys. Is it accurate? Is there any difference?
Well, I've learned over the years now. There's the cosmos, and it's rich with different species of all types of beings. So I refer to these as they're commonly referred to as the Greys, and pretty much have been pretty much the same species. And there were always two kind. One was I'll say what they were. They were 4.5, 5 feet tall.
Okay.
But they're, in my eyes now, and as the years have progressed, they're perfect. I don't mean they're perfect beings. I'm not claiming to embrace alien culture, and because I still have I don't have a 100% trust. I'm always leery. But what I mean by perfect is that the way they're built and the way they walk and the way they can get around and the way they burn energy is they're extremely economic in a sense. So they're streamlined, they're strong. It's the thin fingers, yes, and the eyes are bigger than our eyes are, much bigger actually. And what I call the true aliens or the true Greys, and their face is the skin is leather-like. I don't know if they're wearing clothes. I don't know if it's a suit because they either look naked or it's a real thin suit.
I was about to ask that.
Skin.
And they're not. There's no sexual differentiation.
The groin area is, if it's covered, you can't see it. Now it's like mashed in, so where you couldn't tell. But I always get a sense, and I have over the years, that better than 95% of the Greys that I've encountered were male. And on rare occasions, I've have had experiences with a feminine touch where I thought it was women. Now, kind of where I was going to go later, but I'll touch on it now.
No, that's fine. Why did you think, I mean, other than, with no obvious sexual reference, why would you think male or female?
Well, as the years went on and as the interactions evolved, I was always paralyzed. They finally cut me loose. In fact, the first few times they cut me loose, I kicked one. I always wanted to.
That was another question, whether you had any physical interaction. I was about to ask that, too.
Yeah, it took them a lot of years to let me loose. Now, I wouldn't hurt them now, but all I ever wanted to do, and I would scream this at them, all I want to do is squeeze your fat heads off your squeeze your skinny little necks so your fat head pops. And if any opportunity I had to turn me loose to kill them, that's all I wanted to do. And as I was mentioning earlier, the loathing and the anger is what kept me in one piece and kept my memory intact. So they screen imaged all the time. In the beginning years, they tried to act as if they were angelic, and they could make themselves look that way, and I would shake it off because I learned how to shake off that energy and say, hey, bull doo-doo. Then at times they would come on like, okay, we're the devil, and I go, yeah, right, you're the devil. He flies around in a UFO and he has rooms, and all of these things and all the other tricks that they do. So what they do is they use the least amount of energy to convince you whatever they want you to be. They don't have an ego. They don't need to reveal themselves, and whatever works for people, they're masters. And we're talking about Greys still. They're just absolute masters of deception. They're chameleons.
Right. There's a big argument about what Greys are, Jim. Some people think they're robotic manufactured creatures. Others think they're biological entities. It sounds like you think they're biological entities.
They absolutely, in my experience, are. And they have more amongst them worker beings. So, I mean, you could have a room of them, let's say, on board. Let's say there's a dozen in a room. 10 or 11 will be the little worker beings, which I know are partially robotic because I messed with them. Anytime I could mess with any of them in my resistant days, I did. And, oh, God, I can just go on. There were times that I tried my hardest to see if I can bring out something human because I could see there was the biology. They were robotic. You could see something that was metallic, and yet, what I learned about the eyes, I believe the eyes are about the huge eyes are to absorb energy so they can move around, just like a solar panel. Stimuli, movement, any kind of sound, any kind of movement energizes these things.
That sounds like a machine almost.
Yes, they are. But the true aliens, again, are taller, so there's this distinct difference. They're a few feet taller. They're more streamlined. Their heads aren't quite as big. Their faces look like skin, but like a leathery like skin, where the other ones.
But we're still talking about what we call grays.
Grays, yes. Mm-hmm.
So there were a couple of categories of grays, and the higher ones you're calling the true aliens.
Yeah, the taller ones are the flesh and blood, so to speak. If it's flesh or if it's blood like ours, I can't say. But the smaller ones that people talk about, like the ones that are 3.5 feet tall and so forth, in my experience, those are the little robots, the half biological, and they just obey commands. They're the program. So,
all right. I don't want to miss this, Jim. I want to go back because you said as a reward at one point they let you play with gizmos.
Yeah.
In other words, some of their technical equipment.
Yeah. The thought activated technology intrigued me. And see, gosh, this is 18 years ago, 17, 16 years ago, Art, and I'm seeing things develop now. Even like I was saying, even 18 years ago, that a time would come. See, I didn't even know what Windows was and all this stuff, but I'd seen things akin to that. And I'm not saying we got that from them, but just little hints of what we have today. And we're talking 18 years ago, 17, 16.
Right.
But on one particular session, I did real well. So I got to play with. First thing they did was put something like a ball, a little ball, like a little bit bigger than a marble on the table, and I was told that I could think whatever direction I want that ball to roll, and it would. And that's exactly what I did. So I looked at it. I wanted it to roll up, and it rolled up. I wanted it to roll down. It wasn't my brain power, okay? It was the fact that they can interact with the brainwave somehow, the technology. And then there's some field is created, and look, I'm not a scientist, you understand. I take as much as the science approach as I can, as a novice scientist in a sense. I've learned to be throughout all of this. But it's thought activated, and I thought the ball to roll forward, and it did, or down, right, and left. Then they always challenge you, just as you're getting used to something, they got to throw something else out there to make it harder. So they took the ball away, and they put a cube. Now they wanted me to think the cube rolling end over end. That was harder to do. That took a lot more focus. That took a lot more concentration. And then the cube would go plop, 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 a lot slower in whatever direction. What was interesting, though, is I did have to keep pretty much of a focus on whatever the object was, because if I, turned my head for a second or blinked for a second, it would sometimes fly across the table or fly off the table. So whatever field or whatever force they were using to make it move that caught your thoughts, if you didn't have your concentration right, you would lose it and the thing would just fly off the table. And then the third object they threw down there was something that looked like a little pyramid. And they wanted me to roll or turn the pyramid end over end, point over point, which was much more difficult than just flopping the cube, and of course was 5 times more difficult than rolling, something that was a little bigger than a marble. So when I say play with gizmos, that's some of the stuff that I was able to do. Now, this thing evolved to where I got to see some of their handiwork. I got to see when I was able to move around, but they were doing things to lead me to a point to where I would not harm them as those early years progressed, and they did experiments with whether I would kill things or not, or hurt things or not, if I had the chance to do so.
In what way? How was that expressed?
Well, even, what I didn't share earlier, and actually it was a pretty neat experience, but these guys were, I was free territory to them. They could do with me whatever they wanted. No one believed me. My wife left for periods of months on end, which I don't blame her. Yeah. And I would be by myself at home. And these guys would come through the walls, walk through the living room, check stuff out in the house, and I would be sitting there like a zombie going like, there's nothing I can do about this. This is insanity. And so they would even check out my living environment and walk around.
You must have wondered at times about your sanity, did you?
Yeah, but, I knew. you know how you know. I learned, not to talk about the stuff, to observe it, and something. If you drop a rock on your toe and it hurts, that's real. And there's things that or there's delusions. You can be delusional, or you can what do they call that when people see things when maybe they're, what do they call that? Always get that one messed up.
Well, there are delusions.
And the other thing, when you see something, like, you can be like, let's say you haven't had enough sleep, so you see it's a silly, simple thing.
Yeah, we'll get back to it.
Yeah,
anyway,
it happens to people from time to time. They can be driving on the road a long time and they think they see someone walking across the street and they're not. And it's whatever it is. But anyway, no, clearly, yeah. I mean, you have to examine yourself and you have to wonder. And the only time I really thought I was losing it was losing it to the fact that all these things were happening and it was real, and could I cope with it and take it?
All right. God, here we are already at the bottom of the hour. Hold tight, Jim. When we come back, they taught you an alphabet, I think, that was different than the ABCD, our alphabet minus a couple of letters. They taught you a separate alphabet. Theirs, is that correct?
I would say it's a middle ground communication system, and it's also basic elementary ways of learning how to be telepathic as humans too. It has all of that in there.
All right, hold tight, Jim. All right, everybody, we're going to try it. There's so much information to come from Jim Sparks. We're going to try to fit it in. From Manila, the Philippines, where it's coming down in sheets of rain, I'm Art Bell. Yes, it is. If abductee interviews get any better than this, I've never heard them nor done them. Jim Sparks is my guest. Years and years of being abducted, and lots of details. We'll get right back to him. All right, as much detail as we're getting. Obviously, Jim has written a book called The Keepers, An Alien Message for the Human Race. We haven't even gotten to that yet, and we will. It's available, I'm sure, Amazon.com and all the usual places, so you're really going to want to go jump on that one. Go to Amazon, check it out. Here's a book obviously worth reading, The Keepers, An Alien Message for the Human Race. Go dig it up, find it, buy it. All right, Jim. They first taught you, or forced you, I guess would be the right way would put it, to trace out our own letters. And then did they move partially to an alphabet that was not ours but part of theirs, so that eventually your communication was sort of a mixed bag?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I don't claim to be an expert on it yet because it's still progressing, so to speak, over the years. It's not the main focal point with interaction now, but it's still there. It's a discipline in this respect. What I believe I'm learning about the ability to communicate via non-verbally, telepathically, is that in our minds, for example, one that's not practicing it I'd want to hear your thoughts in my head, so to speak. And what I've learned is that you take your words or your thoughts and you put them into symbols. And I think the brain waves they're scattered all over in your brain, but it forces them into a symbol. So now you can pick up a strong reading, so to speak. And it's almost like, to simplify it, would be like Morse code. One who is new at learning Morse code would hear dots and dashes, and then we'd learn how to convert dot, dot, dash, dash, whatever into a word. One who is learned at the art doesn't hear that anymore. They hear sentences, words, and paragraphs, right?
That's correct. I'm one of those people.
Oh.
So that's exactly how it goes. And in the beginning, of course, as you pointed out, you're just hearing dots and dashes, and you're having to convert, for example, dit-da, which is A. You hear the dit-da, then you see the dit-da in your mind, and you convert it to an A. But after years of doing CW, Morse code, you no longer do that conversion in your head. So it's very, very fast, and you begin hearing words and entire sentences, and you even stop writing it down. All right, Jim. So they were able, obviously, to communicate telepathically with virtually anybody, but in order to get more out of the communication, that's why this alphabet, these symbols.
You got it.
Got it.
So, and I think every brain. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor, but there's brain waves. They're electrical. That's a transmission, and then all you need is something that's sensitive enough to be a receiver. But if you can concentrate or focus those brain waves into the symbols in your head, and part of the learning was I had to feel it, feel the motion, sense the motion of the symbol. And they were strict about the direction of the symbols for each letter and sounding it out in the beginning. So I had to sound it out, sense the direction or the energy of the direction, vision it in my mind, and then that's how they would communicate back. So, and they're teasers. You want a little bit of reward session, and you got to talk to us the way we're showing you, or forget it.
Got it.
And
all right, Jim. Look. You're Jim Sparks. You're a real estate guy, a developer, made condos, put together condos, that kind of thing. Why you? Why not? You're just an average citizen. Why pick on you? Why abduct you? Why not a government official, for example?
Later on, as I learned, they track family lines from day one. That's one strong thing. Another, for whatever reason. And I can get into how I was shown that, because I used to scream that out, why me a lot too. And I did a good session and I got my answers. Kind of neat the way they showed it. And another, as it came out later, when I started having a few experiences with reptilians, or the scaly guys, bumpy heads and stuff. They give you corny answers sometimes, and they're so corny and they're so simple, but they're so pure and true. And at first you just go, oh, come on. And then when you think about it, it's us that, diversifies off of facts, or goes off of facts. It goes out on wings. But they did make contact with power leaders and power brokers and things of that nature, and the response. I'm sorry,
I said, what do you know about that?
Yeah, and the response was, what they did was made money and weapons with it. So they gave technology. Look, I'm not going to go into conspiracy stuff and things of that nature, because these experiences I've seen. Human beings. I've seen military individuals on board. Yep, that's been there. And it's a big part of it. I've also seen, the explanation for that is how we went about it. There's a strong environmental concern, which I can get into what it led to that, because it's pretty exciting what led to that, because it was a mass abduction with lots of people. And I got to walk around free and be part of it. It was one of the first times I got to do anything, and it took years to get to that point, and I can share it with you if there's time tonight. And
you're telling me then that our government has ongoing contact, ongoing agreements with these extraterrestrials. Is that so?
Yeah, which we break regularly, according to them. Which we break regularly. According to them, yeah. And it's the same stuff, I hate to say. Greed, money, power, weapons.
God. Can you recall any specific military officials you saw on board?
Well, one experience that sticks with me was I had gotten pulled the hard way. And it was different because when I had regained, this was when I was still living in, I was in Florida at the time, because these things were happening. One of the things I did is I abandoned my home in the Houston area back in literally abandoned it, and then it stayed vacant for a year, and I ended up renting it out for like 10 years, and I finally sold it. But I left the house because I thought I could escape it. But and I was in Florida at the time, and I had gotten pulled. And when I came to, I was in a hangar, and above ground hangar, and I knew I was in Nevada. I knew I was in Nevada. I knew I was in Nevada. I was sitting on a gurney. The hangar door was open. I could hear fighter jets landing and taking off in succession. Up against the walls were military. They looked like military police, maybe Army. I wasn't sure. And they were their backs were up against the wall of the hangars, and they were like 15 feet apart, and they were guarding the interior, and they had sidearms, and they were us, the USA, because I could tell by the uniform and the way they looked. And I was sitting on a gurney when I came to, and I was sitting up, and this experience was really different, but it's one of the clearest with people, because it was as if I was drugged. I was in slow motion, so I couldn't jump off the table, and I'll tell you what experiments they were doing too, but in a second. But I can move real slow, and I had my wits about me about 75%, and I can see these military MP or security guards leaning up against the wall, guarding it, the perimeter of it from the inside. To my right was a sort of like a couple of steps that were like 3 or 4 steps higher, like on a pedestal, and there were these 2 tubes. But what made the tubes extremely odd was you could see it was almost like a jar in a sense. They were about 4 feet, 5 feet in circumference. They were about 10 feet tall, and almost like a chrome top on it and a chrome bottom, these 2 tubes. But there was no glass. There was nothing holding these things up. But inside of them was, and one in particular, I was looking at one, was a woman. And I was sitting on this gurney. Oh, and then there was this woman in one of them, and then there was this military officer, because I could see he was in like an officer's uniform, but he had his jacket off. And then next to him was a true alien. And there's this rod that always appeared. I maybe sometimes can talk about it. One of the tools I've seen on board a lot was this thing that looked like almost like a wand, like a magic wand, but it wasn't. It was like a technical tool wand that done a lot of things, and it was something with thought, and they could focus it on things, and our people were messing with it too. So our officer guy, had this wand, and it looked like he was a rod. It wasn't a wand, but a rod, and he was about to touch this girl with it, and I did not like that, and I don't know why I had a connection there. I knew that I didn't like the fact that he was doing that, and I started to get up off the table, so it was like they brought me there first, and I think they brought her there second. The alien, I think, was teaching these guys, or instructing these guys, our people, how to transport, but not quite the way they do, through these tube things. And so I had this sense about me that I had to get up there and somehow touch this woman or pull this woman out of this tube because they're going to hurt her. And I was in slow motion, so I slid up off the gurney. This was me. Whatever I could do to do something, I was doing something. I slid up off the gurney, and I started working my way towards the steps to get up to where they were. And I was so slow, and I could hear the security personnel or military police or security personnel. I can hear their steps echoing or running at me in the inside this hangar, and I can hear the patter of their feet, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, all running to stop me. And the officer, the one that had the rod, told them to stop. He says, "I'll handle this." And so he didn't stop me, and I was going up to touch this girl, and I reached inside this thing, and there was no glass, and I was trying to feel her, and I couldn't feel anything, so it was almost like a hologram. I was trying to grab her, and then he said to stop, and I wouldn't stop, and he took that rod, and he tapped the back of my hand with it, and it stung. I went, ow! And then he did it again. He kept tapping it, burning and burning. It hurt and hurt until I finally stopped.
God.
And I then found myself back on the gurney. So anyway, there was more to that. And I don't know how much time there is.
Jim, this indicates a level of involvement and agreement between our government and the extraterrestrials that I didn't even suspect. I mean, in other words, we're talking about they're being in a hangar, they're training each other, essentially, exchange of technology. It sounds like there's a big deal between at least our government and them.
There is, but you got to bear in mind, and I've learned this over the years, that 99.9% of the government at face value doesn't have a clue this is going on. I divide it up in three sections, and this is what I've learned. I call that level of American government the BBB, the Black Budget Boys. It's kind of a pun. But there's the second level of government that believes it knows what's going on, and those are the ones that are back engineering ships. Those are the ones that do some of the things that, of course, it's all top secret, and they're not even hardly aware or even aware of the real dark black ops, or that what I call the BBB, again in pun, which is this group that I'm relating to you. So when you point your fingers at the government and say, "Hey, you guys know better than 99%," they really don't.
Right.
And then there's but it's neat how they do it. Actually, the security or the secrecy of the thing. Of course, it disgusts me. Of course, it frustrates me. Of course, it makes me angry. Of course, I know there's better ways. There's free energy and all these things that I've seen through the years. Maybe another time we can talk about that stuff. Some of the things I've seen, and I know it works, and I know we have that stuff, and I know it can be a better place, and I know it's this greed and paranoia for national security and so forth. In some of these areas, I can't blame us, but again, it's such a small percentage, and it's hidden. It's hidden within hidden within hidden, and that's really interacting with these guys. But yeah, they are.
All right. A number of times already, you've mentioned ships. Were there any times during the abductions, perhaps on the ground in the hangar, or any other time when you really got a very good look, perhaps from different angles, at what their craft were like?
Yeah, and that took years. In fact, one of the best experiences as they started evolving to more of a normalcy for what would be considered normal with these guys.
Yeah.
I just learned how to behave around them. Just keep your mouth shut, and things unfold. But I'm putting it simple, but there's more to it. But that's basically it. Because my experiences were on board those first 6 years, they started experimenting with me and see the lead to this, because actually I can answer that question about the exterior of craft, and also, pretty much earth-shattering. One of the first biggest event with me where they cut me loose and I could run around and see stuff and be free. But there were things that led to that. All I wanted to do was, but yes, I have, and it was probably the most drop-dead gorgeous sight I ever had in my life. The first time I got to see the stuff from the exterior, but what led to that was now I know what their concerns were. Well, will this guy tear the ship apart? Will he kill us? Will he try to if we turn them loose? And I was dead set to kill an alien. I had made up my mind that right around the end of the 6th year of this going on, that I was going to shoot an alien, because periodically they would come to my home. And so I had went and bought myself a .357 Magnum.
Oh.
And I went, and this was during a period when I was just dead set. The next time they walked through the walls, I'm not going to sit there like a dummy. I'm going to shoot them. I'm going to shoot one of them. And to get up my courage, I went and bought a bottle of vodka. and can you imagine me in my nervous state? Yeah, I'm stable. Yeah, sure. Let me have this .357 Magnum and a bottle of vodka. And I sat one particular evening. I was sitting on my easy chair, and I had the .357 in my right hand, and it was loaded, and I had the bottle of vodka in my left hand, and I was just drinking it straight out of the bottle. And I started hearing some noises in the ceiling, so I knew I was about to get a visit. And so I took another giant swig of the vodka. And the technology now doesn't scare me or eke me out like it used to, because it's simply technology. As if like we would use a remote control to turn on TV, they can use a remote control to be in other dimensions, invisibility, whatever it is they want to do. And so they came through the walls, and there was two of them, and one of them, the one that was up front. Now I've got this pistol, okay, and I'm taking this pistol and I'm pointing it at him as he's walking around in the house, and I'm saying, I got to pull the trigger, I got to do this, I got to do this. I take another swig of the vodka to get my courage up, and I'm going to do it. And he walks over to the television set, and he starts fooling with it. So then I yell out something pretty rude like, you guys come a godzillion miles, you've got all this technology, but yet you're so stupid you don't even know how to turn on a television set, and I'm going to kill you. And I cocked the trigger, and I pointed the gun, and my hand was shaking, and I couldn't do it. And telepathically, he didn't even turn around. His back was towards me. He said, we know you're not a killer.
Yeah, I guess they did.
Yeah.
No, you're not a killer.
Yeah.
They did those tests. All right, listen, I still want to know about the ships.
Yeah, that's what's going to lead to that.
All right, good. We're coming up on a break, so just hold tight right there. Jim Sparks is my guest, and clearly the very best abductee interview we've ever done, and we're only through part of it. Good evening, everybody. As the sheets of typhoon rain sweep their way across Manila, with the center of the typhoon to the south of us, it's going to be up around 315 kilometers per hour. I'm Art Bell. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is. Jim Sparks is my guest. Years and years of being abducted. He's not one of those who doesn't remember. He remembers 90% and better of what happened to him. He's got the details. We'll query him about a little extra time if I can get it from Jim. I'm now notifying the network we may run a little over time on this interview, so we'll see how it goes. Jim Sparks, my guest, back in a moment. Jim Sparks, welcome back to the program. Jim, if I need another hour from you, can you give it to me?
Well, I have to work in the morning, but for you and your show, sure.
All right.
I can't tell my clients what I was doing tonight.
Many of your clients may know. Jim, let's go to the ships. I really want a description of what you saw. We've had so many descriptions from the audience of what these things are like. I've had my own sighting, for that matter.
Sure.
What did you see?
Well, shortly after I didn't shoot him incident or experience,
right,
I had gotten pulled, and this marked an extremely unusual turn in the interaction with these things, with these guys. When I got pulled the hard way, when I came to, I was standing up. I was not on board, and I was on good old Earth and a clearing in the woods, meaning that the woods were cleared about the size of a football field, as if it had just been done. And I was standing, and I was able to move. So I had all my mental faculties. I had all my physical abilities. Below me, standing below me on the ground in the woods, were about a dozen or 15 people, just spewed, laid on the ground. Most of them were naked, as if they had gotten pulled from their sleep and brought over there. Some were in nightgowns.
Wow.
And there was one other guy, and then I had this guy, a relationship here His name is Doug Redante, and I met him later, and he filmed the video with this thing, and he didn't know what was leading him. I kept my mouth shut, but anyway. This guy was standing, and he was fully dressed. He had he had dress pants on, a long sleeve shirt. I could see him clearly, and he was talking, and all he could keep saying was, "I was driving my car. I was driving my car." He just kept repeating the same thing over again. And then the people that were on the ground below me were either totally paralyzed or mostly paralyzed, and moaning and groaning. And this one woman I remember, blonde-haired gal was sitting in the fetal position, rocking back and forth, just scared to death, crying. But she was able to move somewhat, just rock back and forth, and most of them were just numb. To my left was another, and a gray, just standing there amongst them, and myself and this guy. To my left was another, the best way to put it, was another pile of people, another 12 or 15, all in the same position, different people with another gray standing there. And then to the left of them was another pile of people. And so what had me mesmerized was the fact that I could move, I could walk. I was looking at my hands, I was looking at the sky, and I was thinking to myself, man, this is the first time these guys have just let me like this, you know. And no, I wasn't on board. Again, it took a long time before they did that stuff. But
for understandable reasons, once they firmly understood that you were not murderous, I guess you sort of graduated from some point.
Yeah, I guess that, that's a good way to put it, Art. And I was seeing that, and it had taken years to get there. And the girl I was looking at the girl. My attention went to that girl that was moaning in the fetal position, rocking back and forth, and the gray that was standing next in my pile of people, so to speak, said to me telepathically, "Calm her." And then the next thought that came to my mind was, wow, God, they're giving me a task now? What, am I part of this thing? Well, this was a mass abduction, So I was like a kid in a way, but I was cool. Wasn't going to blow it.
Now you're a senior abductee.
Yeah, good way to put it. So I walked over to her, and I put my hand on her shoulder, and I said, hey, look, you're going to be okay. This is going to pass. I know you're feeling sick. I know you're feeling scared. We all feel like that. They're going to take you in this room, and they're going to teach you this alphabet. And then I didn't know what to say. I started saying this stuff, and then the Gray goes, "Don't tell her anything. Just calm her."
Yeah.
I think I was making her more nervous when I was saying that. And I said, "Oh, you're going to be all right. Don't worry." And then the other guy was going, "My arm." He was complaining about his arm for some reason, and he was scared. This is someone I became very close with here later, who appeared and remembered this stuff. But anyway, part of it he did, a good part of it. Anyway, he said the voice, the telepathic message was clear in my head, calm him. So I walked up to him and I said, "Look, man, you're going to be fine." He goes, "I'm sick. I want to throw up." I said, "Yeah, you always feel that way at first." I said, "It'll always pass." And as I was saying that to him, I heard the people below me in my group moaning like, "They're coming, the ship." This was kind of weird, Art, because it was like they had some sort of, these were people being abducted, but they had some sort of knowing that some ships were coming for them, and the ship, they're coming, and I looked over to my left, and it was an overcast evening, which I didn't mention earlier. I remember the trees, too. They were pine trees. So I figured and they were kind of like a southern pine, so I was somewhere in the south in the United States. So I kind of geographically placed myself there by the pine trees. And to the left, I saw in the horizon three lights, just three blobs of light in the midst of the overcast right to the horizon. And what they looked like was, when they have these giant candle lights when they're advertising a new car lot or a store or something like that, and it kind of looked like that. But and as I was looking at them, and they were blurry, they weren't that clear at that point. One of them just shot across the sky, and was right above myself and the pile of people that I was with, and was hanging, but he was still above the clouds where you can only see a light. And then the second one shot across the sky, I mean, in an instant, but you could just see it go across, and hung over the second pile of people. And then the third one shot across the sky and hung over, all this in like definitely a formation, or they had it purpose mathematically, the sequence. And the third one hung over the third group of people. Now I'm looking at these two lights, and I still can't make anything out because they're above the clouds. And then I noticed that the light started getting a little brighter where I was standing. So when I was looking, I looked up more at the one that I was under, and it started descending. And when it did, and it got below the clouds, it was just one of the most, I just got to say, beautiful, because that's what I ended up yelling out. It's just one of the most beautiful, beautiful sights that I had ever seen. It didn't look anything I thought a UFO should look like. For starters, the bottom of it as it came through looked like I'd say the thing was the size of like 4 big houses, is what it looked like, at least at first. And it was like an eggshell at the bottom, where the light was emanating, like it was one giant beam of light that looked like a not perfectly round eggshell shape. And then it had a sphere. It was spherical, if I'm saying that right. And then it had a dome on the top, but I could see windows, and I could see, or portals or windows, and in the windows were not just ETs or Gray scrambling behind the scenes. I could see people scrambling behind the scenes and looking out the window and looking at the groups and checking things out, like, you know, they had just dropped down and saw us. And the light that was emanating from this thing just got brighter and brighter, and it was the clearest, brightest, whitest, cleanest light that I had ever seen in my life, with a beautiful, beautiful blue hue. And I just looked at that thing, and I was staring it up, and I raised my hands up, and I just went, "It's beautiful!" It's beautiful! And I could see people looking and running to another window and looking down, and I could see an ET. And then the second one dropped, did the same thing with its beam of light, and then the third one dropped. And I was just totally awebound.
And they were all similar in appearance?
Yes. But one thing about them was that I was thinking, even though I was overtaken by the excitement of it and everything, and I was thinking, these things don't look aerodynamic, because it just was not, they were certain, but that thing hanging out the bottom, maybe it was the drive that the light was coming out of.
Any sound associated with it?
No, totally silent. I've seen other crafts, always silent, dead silent. Okay. It's almost like they kind of remind you of a lighter than air, like a balloon, that people travel, and it's just like they're surreal. There's no sound. There was no sound, and so it started. The one on top of me started descending even more, and I just had the frame of mind. It just came to me to do the symbol for high, which later became shorter and shorter and shorter. But the symbol for high, or the symbol for low, I did it with my right hand, which is to take my right hand and go from right to left, which was the I, and then to go straight up, which was the H for high. So I just went straight to the left with my right hand, straight up to the right for high or hello.
Mm-hmm.
And instantly when I did that, boom, I blacked out.
Wow.
When I came to, I was in what looked like a foyer, but a huge foyer, huge hallway, and all of those people. Now, see, when I say 90% or better, there's these periods like that where I'm here and then I'm somewhere else, but most of the time in those in the experiences, it's like 98%. I remember everything, but when it was the experiences like this, I black out. So I think what happened was they pulled us with this light somehow. But we were all standing in this foyer or hallway thing, all the people that were on the ground, and I was in the front of all of them, and to my right was this guy that I was telling you about, the one who said he was driving his car, right?
Sure.
And one of the ETs or Greys telepathically said, "Lead them." Now I'm thinking, lead them? It's almost like I knew what to do, but I didn't know what to do, and the only thing I could think to do was just walk forward. Okay.
They're almost treating you like a trustee in jail.
Yeah, you got it. It lead them. I mean, the words I remember specifically, lead them. And what am I leading them to? Slaughter? You know, a lot of things come through your mind.
Of course.
But I wasn't sensing that kind of danger. And the people could stand up, but they were staring straight out like zombies, so they didn't even know they were there. The guy that was standing to my right, he was still scared. So I took his hand and I laid it on top of my right hand, and I started to take a step. And when I took a step, the whole group took a step. When I took another step, the whole group took a step. And I just picked up the pace, and I could see a light where we were walking to. And when we got to the light, it opened up into this huge auditorium. It was the best way I could put it, like the size of a basketball stadium and a professional or college basketball stadium, huge. And all this scurrying was going on towards the back of the room, but with humans, and I could see more extraterrestrials, but I could see quite a bit of humans, and they were not in military attire. They were in civilian attire, lab coat-y-like attire, though, towards the back, and there were nothing but rows and rows and rows and rows of monitors with like a seat in front of them. And my instructions from that point was to seat them. Okay, so I take the first guy that was with me, well-lit room, noise going on, you can hear people talking, whatever they were doing, mass abduction, man. And that's what they did was really a surprise. But so I took the first guy, which was the one that I had had his arm on me, and I walked all the way to the end of the row, and I sat him on a chair in front of this thing that looks akin to a monitor, and sat him there. I walked back, and as I was walking halfway back, this was me. I go, I got to check this out. I got to see. So I started looking around. I started looking at the monitors. I started looking, trying to figure out what the people were doing in the back. And the telepathic voice went, no. And I kept looking, and it went, no, no. You know, like you would tell your dog, okay?
Yeah,
and
sure.
then I kept looking, and boom, I blacked out. So that's something they didn't want me to do, I guess.
A big no-no.
Yeah. When I came to again, I was sat in front of a monitor, and so was everybody else, and the whole thing was just filled with people sitting in front of these things. The screens lit up, and they all lit up at the same time, just like if you go to a showroom and they have the glass outside of where their new televisions, and there's 20 TVs all with the same channel kind of thing.
Sure,
so
sure.
The glow was coming identical from each screen, and the first thing that came up on these monitors was just a drop-dead gorgeous, beautiful blue sea, teeming with fish. And you could tell that your senses were heightened however they did it. They made your senses much more heightened than normal. So your emotions and the beauty of it, and it was so real, and the colors were so vivid, and they were so clear, and you've never seen a sea so beautiful. And I just went, wow. And then that scene stayed up, and then you heard it went dark, and then you heard a hum like for 3 seconds. I think the hum was something to heighten your adrenaline or something. And then the screen lit up again, and it was a beautiful mountain scene with snow-capped mountains and a crisp, clear blue sky, and it was just gorgeous. And you're going, wow, this is so beautiful. And then that disappeared, and then you would see a forest a beautiful forest, and the trees couldn't be any greener, and the earth couldn't look any healthier, and it was just scene after scene of just the most breathtaking earth scenes you had ever seen, magnified. And then they slowly started turning ugly, meaning the first scene that I saw with the sea was looking polluted and dark, and then it would disappear, and then another scene came up, and then you could see fish bloated, and then another scene came up where it was the beautiful mountain scene, and the air was polluted, and across the screen said, right in plain words that everybody could read, and telepathically, so the telepathic message was where everybody could hear it, which was, "You're killing your planet." And then the next scene, where you saw the trees, the acid had burned the top of the trees. "Your planet is dying." The next scene, and they got uglier. "You're killing your planet. Your planet is dying. You're killing your planet."
I think most of us know that's happening, Jim. I think we have an inner sense. We all know it. We wouldn't have to see those scenes to know the poles are melting, the air is bad, the oceans are dying. All of this is in the news now. Hold tight, Jim. Jim Sparks is my guest. Years of abductions. You're hearing it all tonight. From Manila, rain-drenched Manila, I'm Art Bell. All right. And this is official notification that we're going another hour, another live hour tonight. My guest is Jim Sparks. And when we left him in the last segment, the screens had been showing everybody the beauty to the death of our planet. Your planet is dying. Well, most of you know, most of you, that is, who have been following what we do on this program. In fact, even what the mainstream media, when they're willing to report it, have said, you know damn well in your heart that what he just told you is the truth. Some people block this out. Some are in denial about it, Jim. But even those of us who have not had the kind of experience you've had can see what's going on our planet and know the truth of what you just said.
Sure.
Listen, so many things I want to get to. For example, I'm being pummeled. I have a little computer in front of me with my own little screen, and they get to ask me questions. They want to know, we certainly described the Greys in quite a bit of detail. I'd like to do the reptilians, if we could, the same way. As much as you can tell me about the physical characteristics, differences, tell me about the reptilians.
Yeah, there's different species of them. And there's one type that are just huge. They're 9, 10 feet tall.
Oh.
They look like monster linebackers. Huge, thick necks.
You are a football fan.
Yeah. Scales. American, red, white, and blue.
Really scales, huh?
USA won all the way. But anyway, yeah, scaled, snake-like, scaly, small scales. Some, well, let me just stick with that one for now. They have, their pupils are red. Their eyes look like that of, in fact, all the, what would, again, commonly be referred, they never said we're reptilians, but would be referred to as them, have the snake-like or lizard-like eyes. But the big ones, I think what fascinates me about them is that their skulls or their heads, they're not pretty to look at, and they made it easy on me in the beginning by screen imaging or putting holograms of like a human face in front of their face so I wouldn't be scared when, well, I can get into that. But their foreheads, where your cognitive ability is or your thinking is, it's like their brains that protrude out or protruded out at birth or whatever it is, and they hang out over their brow, over their eyes, and some is lumpy, some of it sticks out further than others. So it's like that part of the brain is super overdeveloped. That type, and they're all again telepathic. Then there's another kind that, now these are more human too. They have emotions, meaning they have feelings. Mm-hmm. They communicate slowly, which I can get into that in a little bit, but I'm describing them. Again, my experiences with them are 3, 5, 8%, somewhere in that nature over the last 20 or 18 years. That came latter. For all I know, they're in control. I don't know, because it was like the Greys brought me to the point of a more normal interaction, and then they started coming into the picture in the latter years.
Was there any sense, Jim, that the reptilians and the Greys were from, for example, the same planetary system, or do you think you were experiencing some sort of, for lack of a better phrase, galactic federation ship with creatures from different planetary systems?
They're and you have to use the word sense, because they're not real forthcoming when it comes to that. I'm more inclined to believe that they're interdimensional, but that they can be in one dimension. They can be like 60 or 70% in one dimension and 30 or 40% in our dimension to do the work. Oh. If they need to be more in this dimension to physically move objects, then they may be 60 or 70% here, and of course, most of the time they can be 100%. I think what I've learned is that these guys just don't die. And if they do, they live, because, well, this is the messages later for people that I've gotten in about death. But anyway, they go on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So where they're from isn't anything to do with where they're at now, if I'm making sense to you.
Yes, you are.
Because they travel time like you would work a remote control. In fact, if you remind me, I can tell you an experience where they returned me 3 minutes before I left, and I saw myself, and I saw the sequence of everything, and it was fascinating. And so I can tell you about being at the same place at the same time and what that's like, and how one sees the other and the other one doesn't, and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But
there's something else I want to quickly ask. You mentioned that the man, I think it was the man with the arm, that you became friends with this man, and you even gave us his name, right?
Sure, I did.
Uh-huh. What is this man now doing? Have you had interaction with this man?
Yeah. He's become a very close friend. He lives in Florida now.
He's in Florida?
Yep, and I'm now in Nevada. And
his name again?
Doug Rodante.
And so you communicate, you talk with Doug?
Oh, yeah, he has a small Infinite Communications, a small video production company, and what had happened was I had gone to, in the latter years as things progressed, and I was sharing more of the story. I got invited to speak at a MUFON conference. It was in Tampa. Yeah, it was in Tampa, and several months had gone by. But I remembered this guy. I remembered this guy. I remembered this. And I know I was supposed to remember this guy. And I know there was a reason, and it was planned, so it wasn't some haphazard, because he was standing and walking and talking, and which is unusual, particularly to be first pulled like that. But anyway, I went to this conference, and it was just before I was going to speak, and I was getting some fresh air. I was standing out in the area there in the courtyard, and there was a sidewalk. And he had, look, I'm not a professional technician, but he had one of those giant cameras on his shoulder that the news people use, one of those professional type.
Sure.
And I saw him, and he was coming down the sidewalk, and I just, my heart stopped. And I said, man, it's that guy. It's that guy. I can't believe it's that guy. And this is the way I am, because I don't embrace alien culture. I'm very leery, but I've come, I have a much healthier respect, and vice versa. but I'm always cautious. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm not going to say nothing. I'm going to see if he says anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he came walking by the sidewalk. He took a glance at me. He kept going, and he had this giant thing on his shoulder, and then he stops. And, when he stopped, he's like wobbling back and forth because he had this piece of equipment. And he turns around, and then he came over to me. He goes, "Do I know you?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." I let this go on for like, and what it led to was really neat too. The visitor phenomena. We did a video, but he says, "Do I know you?" I said, "No, I don't think so." And I just was biting my tongue, He says, "Man,
of course, yes. Let me jump ahead. Is Doug Rodante? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is Doug willing to back up your story?
Sure. I haven't. When was the last time I talked to Doug? I guess it was about 5-6 weeks ago. He's a neat guy. He part of this thing where this filter that you can, this water thing that it doesn't even require electricity. He took it over there when that tsunami hit, where you can put, it works. The military's trying to get them to make small ones for, I go into these things. I run into these people because of this phenomena where it purifies 30 gallons of water. You can put it in a cesspool, and it'll purify 30 gallons of water an hour. Wow. It's solar powered, or you can plug it in, and they flew, and he has an airplane, and they flew it over there where all that trouble was, like 50 of these things, and
close to me actually. So Doug will back up what you say. This is so incredible. The whole thing is so incredible to find somebody that was actually on the craft with you.
It's cool,
My
isn't it?
God.
Isn't it cool? And so, but I let this thing flower. So I was being really tight-lipped about it because I didn't want to say, "I know who you are." Blah 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
These are the things I just learned over the years, like dealing with these guys and dealing when I say them, and all these things that unfolded. And I would watch and I would listen, I would see, and he was there to film something kind of tied in or not really related to the UFO phenomenon. And if you ever want to talk to him sometimes, I'd rather him put it in his words.
Yes, I do.
But he started talking to me, and then I told him why I was there, and I was into this concern over the environment. And I can get into that with you in a little bit too, because one of the first things they said that to stop, if you want to stop this mess from happening, there's a way to do it, and I can get into that. But I'm talking about the destruction. There's still a shot at it, but we're getting close to the point of no return. But and we really are. But the point of no return, once we hit it, it'll just be a slow degrading process. That, well.
There are a number of scientists who think that we may already have reached it.
We got a
if we're
shot.
Not there, we're very close.
We got a shot. We still have a shot. We're close, but we have a shot, and that's the rainforest. But that's the planet is having a hard time. We've attacked her arms and her legs. The only thing left is the torso, and the lungs of the planet is the rainforest. That's the first place. And I've got a plan for this whole thing that came through them that I can share that would work. But nonetheless, with Doug, he got to know me as a person, and I kept from telling these things. And without going into a lot of details, it'd be kind of neat for him to put it in his words too. He just had this. It sparked this immediate interest in him to produce a video regarding the phenomena and my involvement with it as an abductee, and he just got instantly, like a light switch hit him to involve his company at the time and his business at the time in producing a video, and we did called the visitor phenomena.
Okay, obviously these people, these aliens of all sorts, were on a mission to show us that we were in the process of destroying our planet, and something's got to be done about it. But and there's got to be some reason, Jim, that you've already told me and explained that there's government contact, there's government involvement, heavy government involvement. You would think that this message would be one that you would carry to our government or to the governments of the world, Instead, they continue to abduct people by the dozens or hundreds, who knows, and they're laying this almost impossible mission on regular people. Why do you suppose that's going on instead of the government itself, instead of our leaders, those who could actually order something done about it?
Exactly. And, well, that's what led to the interaction with the scaled guys, I guess reptilians. Because it was another earth-shattering experience I had shortly after the earth-shattering experience of the being on board and the mass abduction, everybody getting a lesson on the environment. And, you know how those people have those concave cuts or marks on their body that they talk about with abductees, like
Yes.
somebody's scoop marks?
Yes, yes.
Well, see, what I've seen is, I can't say all of that comes from that, but they put like a line in you. I don't know if it's a tube or a line. So like when you were looking at these earth scenes, and I think that had something to do with because there's more to that what happened there too. It has, I'm coming up with these points because I've been able to fill in gaps with researchers and why is this and why do people report that, and I think that's what enhances your or heightens your emotions to people when they do these mass abductions with the earth lessons, so to speak, to be more gravitated to the beauty of the planet and to be, it helps to be more deeply saddened by its destruction, so to involve you more. Timing on this thing has amazed me. They're numerologists. My voice would be heard. I was told 18 years later, having no clue that how could it possibly be this little guy, nothing, like you said, not big power, now here I am. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not self-proclaiming anything. I'm just this average guy. But to answer your question, I'm saying you were about to say something, because the reptilians were the ones that got into how they contacted the government and how they worked with the government and how the government failed and how now it's the average person that is getting the contact in that regard.
So, in other words, they've almost given up on the governments.
Well, they got another plan for them too.
Oh,
which is, and there's others who've mentioned this, and I think tried to do it. Which is, well, I probably should tell you how it went in sequence if you'd like to hear it with them, because it'll answer.
I would, yes.
I had a few months after that, what I call earth-shattering change and interaction with them. I was pulled another time, and this was the first time I ever laid eyes on, and there was other types of reptilians, so I never got to those species too. If you remind me later, there's time, because there's others that look kind of like snakes or snake-like, thin faces and stuff. They're the ones that are cynical sense of humor, so to speak. But, these things have personalities and emotions, other than the Greys, which don't at all. They're just business. But I had gotten pulled, and the whole technology that they use to pull me, when I say pull me, that means, the abduction to get you from the technology to get you from point A to point B, being abducted,
yes.
Okay, was much more gentle, meaning that I heard the whirling, whipping sound, but it was slower in RPM. It was gentler inside my head. I felt the acceleration, but the acceleration wasn't to the point of, I later think that the beginning stages of that acceleration would be like normal G-force and you black out. And not realizing, I didn't know anything about stuff like that, but now that I've seen things, I think that's the beginning part of it. You black out and then you really zip fast. But the G-forces were slower, more gentler, and I did black out, but there was something that happened that had never happened before. So now, like I say, these things were flowering experiences. I actually regained consciousness prior to getting to point B, which I was approximately a few hundred yards high in the sky, and I looked down to what looked like a field. It's the strangest place to pull somebody and then meet with them.
Was that the first time you had gained consciousness during transit?
Yeah, and it's happened quite a few times afterwards. I've seen this huge giant ship that looked like they're collecting art. They're collecting every seed. They're collecting every plant. They're collecting every animal. They're collecting semen.
Sounds a little ominous to me.
Again, that's it's another thing.
That doesn't sound like they think we're going to succeed.
I think it's an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it is.
All right. An obvious question, Jim, and a big one is they're trying to help us. They've obviously, according to you, gone to our government and feel they've failed. They're going to ordinary people like you now.
Yep.
Why, Jim? Why do they want to help us? Why do they have an interest in us? What is it about us that even causes them to traverse either a great distance or even a dimension to help us? Why?
You want to have a healthy suspicion of them because they do have their own motives. And it's not just about us. It's about the resources that they use here, too, that they protect. So it works both ways.
So their interest is somewhat selfish.
Yes, but not totally. But it benefits all of us.
Uh-huh. Do you have the feeling that they have our best interests at heart? Hold your answer to that. Okay. We're already at the top of the hour. Right, we're going into an extended live hour. Hold tight, Jim. From Manila, Philippines, basically the other side of the world, I'm Art Bell. Easily the most descriptive, detailed recitation of years and years of abduction that we've ever had on this program. My guest is Jim Sparks. Now, those are the portals and numbers for you to come and ask a question. I've dominated this now for hours. It's going to be your turn shortly. I've got a few more questions, but if you've got a question for Jim Sparks, by all means, let's hear from you. With this much detail, his book, The Keepers, An Alien Message for the Human Race, has got to be a real winner. And I'm sure there's much detail in there that we're obviously not getting to tonight. So make it to Amazon or whatever and grab a copy of The Keepers. Jim, welcome back.
Well, thank you.
All right. I asked you if you believe they have our best interests at heart. And it was sort of a mixed answer. Is that
have a healthy suspicion? I got to see if there were 360 degrees, separate degrees to their, let's say, when I say they, let's talk about the Greys and reptilians combined, to their agenda.
Okay.
I got to experience firsthand 2 or 3 of those degrees, and so not only do I do my best to look at things as logically as possible, keep it with technology, don't sway to the left too far, don't sway to the right, and I have a business perspective. And there's one area that I'm right at 100% certain, for example, that they do farm mammals and humans, just not hurt us, farm, but for raw materials to create various types of worker bees. These things are seen. I've seen the worker bees with reptilians. I've seen the worker bees on board with Greys, and I've seen them on board with us people. I've seen the worker bees with humans, and this is another type of, I don't know if they're aliens or what, but I think other people refer to these type as blondes or something to that effect. But
Nordics, maybe.
Yes, that's what it is. And I've seen, but I've had 1 or 2 little short glimpses and experience with them. But they look like people. But I've seen the little worker bees running tasks for them. But the point being is that that's an investment, meaning that the raw materials necessary to make these things, the earth is one of the places for them to get this stuff. And so, like any other farmer, I don't mean to be so crude, but I'm just going to put it in basics. If you're a farmer and you have cattle, and your cattle are on pasture, and those cattle that's your livelihood, that's your life. And if they get sick, you're going to want to tend to their health. But if the pasture becomes polluted or dirty, you're going to do what you can to fix it. And if worse comes to worse, you may collect the semen and the ova from the best breed, store it, and then take it to another pasture, so to speak.
Well, and occasionally a crop gets completely ruined and you plow it under. I'd rather not think about that one.
I know.
Listen, is it your impression that they have, as we define it, consciousness?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they have longevity. And I'll kind of touch on the longevity thing briefly, because there's a lot of things I've learned here in the latter years in particular. That, see, the problem we have as people, as humans, is that about the time we figure anything out, we die. It's a natural thing.
Yeah.
And then in the process, we do our best to pass it along to our siblings, our children. But, it's our nature, and when you think about children, and it's been going on for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, maybe over and over again, unfortunately, but they seem to have to learn things on their own. You can show them 100% of everything, and they may take your word for 20 or 30%, but still there's that 70% they got to...
Almost always they have to go the hard way.
Yeah. And it's like war. We do the same thing over and over again. Again, by the time we figure it out. See, these guys have had plenty of time to figure it out because they don't die. And if they do, it's probably rare, and they probably have a way of going on another way, but in the physical, in the flesh, not in the spiritual, with total consciousness. And given anybody, for example, any decent person, if they went on a couple of thousand years, a good person, say a good person went on 1,000 years, and then you could bring that good person back to this place in time and say, hey, gee, would you like to be a president for 4 years? Do you not think that good person with 1,000 years of experience under his or her belt would not make probably the world the best leader?
No question.
Now there's 6 billion of us, and I can get into more detail on that later. But we got other problems that they see we need to fix first for us to even be here. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. Was there any sense, Jim, that was there ever any reference to a higher power, that they believed or understood there to be a higher power than even themselves?
I absolutely, Art. I absolutely stay as far away from that as I possibly can.
I understand.
I want to see things flower and develop, because there were periods in my life for many years that I was, quote unquote, very religious. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, attended Bible study on Wednesdays and things of that nature. I don't want to say fanatically religious, but pretty much. And throughout all of this, I'm seeing things that don't seem to fit into my Bible, if I'm making sense. And so what I've come to, and without going into that too deeply, but I've come to this, that if there is a God, and I'll say there is, then it's humankind, and it's simple. It's humankind who puts a cap or a limit on God's creations. And so all these things that are around us and all these things that are coming from other worlds, is it anything to do with something spiritual? Is it anything to do with God? Maybe so, maybe not. And I just kind of, that's my take on it. So I stay away from that until it comes to me.
Yeah, there was never any reference from them telepathically or any other way to indicate that they worshipped anything at all.
Well, there was tricks. They're masters of deception, as we would define deception. But it's whatever it takes for us not to know they're there for their own reasons. So there were times that they tried to come across to me to get me to cooperate as if they were some they themselves were angelical or spiritual or of God. And then the reverse, they were of darkness or the devil, and they were demons and this stuff. Well, I wasn't buying any of it.
That makes you a very good observer. All right, look, I've got a lot of people who want to ask you questions. Let's see if we can move through them fairly quickly. First-time caller line, Annie from Kansas. You're on with Jim Sparks.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Annie.
I was wondering, have you had any family members abducted, parents, or any relatives? And I did have two questions. The second one was, why do they say tell no one? They threaten family members. They threaten people not to say anything, but yet they've told you that your voice will be heard.
Addressing the first question regarding family members, Annie, in the early years, they couldn't have been any more reverse of accepting anything like that could be possible. As the years went on, and particularly my mother started opening up about experiences that she had, and she only opened up. Now, my mom passed away a couple of years ago, but a couple of years before she passed away, she finally opened up to. And this is just human nature. It's like people need backup before because they're afraid to say anything. They don't want people to think they're crazy or things of that nature. But she opened up and started describing things that had happened to her, and I knew what they were because she was describing gurneys, and she didn't quite know. My mom was the old Italian, old-fashioned type. She never learned how to drive, and she was just pleased just being in the house and taking care of the family, and that was his
Okay,
mom.
so she had been abducted.
Yeah, she had been abducted. So, but she wasn't forthcoming about that in the early years because, quite frankly, I was scaring everybody with my, just straightforwardness about it.
I
But
hear
to
you.
answer the question, yes.
All right, and on threats, to keep your mouth shut.
You mean through ETs or through people?
Well, I had the impression she was asking that I guess some ETs have made threats to people to keep their mouths shut. Is that so?
Well, all the threats to keep my mouth shut were from people. And they were...
Well, that figures.
Yeah, and I mean, literally came... you didn't want me to go on in too much detail on some of this. Again, there's stories on top of stories with government people.
You were contacted by the government, weren't you?
Yeah, they came to my door.
Who came to your? Who exactly came to your?
Well, I had an experience where, for several months they kept watch, and I mean they were blatant about it. It wasn't like I couldn't see it going on. They followed, and I wasn't just paranoid. Okay, and again, I think you're getting to know me by now that. I look at things as they are. I don't swing too far to the left or the right, and if something may be paranoia from all of this, then I'm really strong about making sure it's not before I presume or assume that it is a case, and it is. And when there's a white 4-door sedans sitting in front of your across the street from your house near the woods with two guys in it, taking 2 12-hour shifts for weeks and months on end, you kind of get the feeling that when you get in your car and they follow you, that somebody's watching you, okay?
All right, but when they actually contacted you...
They came to the door the first time, and I even went to the FBI to try and shake them off, and I can tell you about that, too. That was an interesting story. I was bold. I didn't care. I knew it was happening. I didn't care. But this is it. This is real. This is what's going on, and I was a lot stronger about... that in my earlier years, and I've mellowed out quite a bit, and things have evolved.
Okay, well, they came to the door and said what?
They said, you have to stop talking about it. And that's the first words out of their mouth. You have to stop talking about it. And I looked at them, and I really did this when I'm about to tell you, because I was, again, a little stronger, more full of, vinegar, so to speak. And I kept my mouth shut, and if you don't stop talking about it, and you don't keep it to yourself, and these were the guys that were sitting in the car following me around, they finally came to the door, it may affect your family. And so that got me so angry that I jumped across or leaped across the porch with my hands forward and just put my hands around part of one of their neck and shoulder and pushed them into the side of the porch. And I was just so raged because now what, you're threatening, I'm going through all of this stuff, and now you got the nerve to threaten my family, and I was squeezing this guy's, mostly his shoulder, and they stayed 100%, it was so eerie, Art, 100% and totally calm. The other one didn't do anything. I'm holding this guy up against the wall. I know my face must have been red, purple, and green with anger at that point, with all the frustration. But what made me scared was not because they were there and doing that, was like they just weren't responding to it like you think they would, like throw me down or do something like that.
Yeah, that's odd. You'd think they'd take the opportunity to become violent.
And I just let him go. And when I let him go, he just brushed himself off. And they continued to walk down the sidewalk, my sidewalk, towards the car. And then they both turned around at the same time and said, "Stop talking about it." And then they got in their cars and when they left, or the car and left. And then I can go on with this. I mean, that's just another story in itself. I don't know if you want to hear it or not further.
You went to the FBI.
I did. And they followed me right straight over there. That was in Houston. I went into the office, and the way the office was set up over there, and I don't know if it's still the same now, but I can describe it. It was fenced. And I parked inside the fence area, and their car sat outside the fenced area. So they didn't even, budge from the FBI. They just sat out there in their car. And then I made some not nice gestures at them as I was going up the steps to go to the front door, like, "I got you now." I thought I did.
So you got into the FBI building, and no doubt were given an appointment with an agent.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Jim, what did you say?
You know what? When I went in there, it reminded me of a doctor's office, because the receptionist lady, the secretary, whatever she was very nice. She was very polite, but she was behind like a very thick glass window. But she slid it just like you were at a doctor's office. That's what it reminded me of. And I said, "I got a real problem." And then all of a sudden I thought, "Oh my God. What am I going to tell this guy? I've got aliens chasing me, and I've got these people."
Exactly.
So I just switched gears right away. I said, "There's a demonic cult that's bothering my family in bad ways, and I want to talk to somebody about it." That was all I come out of my mouth. What else? So I'm thinking, man, what are they going to do? Baker act me, put me in, whatever. Say, lock me up. You got a cuckoo here. And so when the guy came out, the gentleman came out. You could tell he had special agent so-and-so. He was a supervisor. He was kind. He was reserved. He was very calm. And I said, "Look, I've got some kind of cult, devil cult, or whatever it is, that is bothering myself and my family." I said, "And they're even hanging around in a car. They're following us." And I was real calm, and I didn't want to act like some paranoid, delusional freak, off the street. And I looked well.
Sure.
Okay? And I spoke well. And what he said was simple. He said, "The FBI will only get involved in things like that." He said, "Cults are perfectly legal." Okay? He said, "However, the ones that are not legal," he said, "local law enforcement, or your local law enforcement, has to contact us first to say there's a problem. So what you need to do first is go to your local police, and then
that sounds exactly like what they would say." That's
what he told me. But I'll tell you what bothered me, Art. And he was nice to me, okay? And I felt calm, okay? So and this really bothered me. And look, I'm not pointing fingers at this. I'm not one of those that do that. I don't want to say government conspiracy. I don't want to say this because there's an answer for that too. With amnesty, and I can get into that if there's time. And all this is not coming from me. It's coming from higher minds than mine that I've been interacting with. But when he walked me to the door, and he opened the door, and as I started to go down the steps, the car with the two guys was still sitting outside the fence, and he gave him a nod.
So, boy, that'd be enough to make you go home and jump into another bottle of tequila.
Well, it was like I was coming to the point at that time, these things are going to happen. I'm going to get pulled whether I like it or not. I don't have any choice here. And I just came to the point, there's nothing I can do about it. So you're going to make your life back to normal as possible. When these things happen, they happen. Don't think about it. Just go on and see
Jim,
where it's going to go.
Is it still going on now?
Oh, in a very positive way, yeah.
In a very positive way. So
Yeah.
you're still having contact.
Oh, yeah, not quite the same. It's I kind of laugh now about the old days the way it used to be, because it was horror-filled and traumatic. There's no doubt about it, but it's different now.
Okay, Jim, hold tight. We'll find out how it's going now, and I promise we'll get to more calls in a moment. This has been really something special. In the middle of an extra hour from Manila, rain-soaked Manila, I'm Art Bell. Once again, Jim Sparks. Jim, I'm going to get to the phones very quickly, but you said now it's so very different. Your interaction continues with them in what way? In what different way?
Well, when I explain these things, I like to go into how they flowered. So the first step in it flowering in a different way was the fact that I always crabbed, yelled, and tried to get a point across these guys, like why can you never not just have a meeting like what we would consider normal on our terms, like hey, I'm coming, knock on the door or do something like that. So anyway, and that was a request I had for years. So when the first time they honored it, it was different, but it was positive. I was and I didn't know it was going to happen. I was driving. And it was a sterile boulevard down in Fort Myers Beach at the time. I was in Florida. And I was on the way on the south end of the island where it's wooded and natural and there's it's just a natural environment. And as I was going down the road, a light in the sky, extremely bright, at a 45-degree angle, just shot straight across my point of view and beamed that light right in my eyes as I'm driving the car, to where I started to put my hand in front of my eyes, and it was several miles away. And the telepathic message was, go here. And go here meant a spot in the swampy part and the back bay, which was across from the Gulf, out in that area, which was a very kind of a scary place to go and be by yourself in the middle of the swampy, animals and all that stuff. But that's their nature. You always have to be vulnerable. They will always be in control. Always. These guys, oh God, I can go on. But anyway, they leave nothing to chance. So they burnt an image in my brain, so to speak, where to go. This was the beginning of interaction on more of a normal tone. And so I drove there. I knew exactly where they were talking about, even though I never was in that spot, and it was in the woods, and it was in a swampy area, and I parked my vehicle there, and I was sitting there. And a shadow of a about 30 foot in diameter, round, circular craft. The shadow I didn't even see where it came from the sky. I just saw it hovering over my through my windshield over my car, and it was no more than, when it stopped, it just slowly descended, quiet, not a sound. And I was scared to death because, again, I was vulnerable. I was by myself, but, hey, this is different, I was telling myself. And other people have witnessed this stuff with me that I'll tell you about later, so it's just not me. I've had experiences where people have seen the craft on the beach and tripped them out. But anyway, it was late at night. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, hardly any light, and the shadow of the ship was hanging over the car. And there was the telepathic connection with "we're here." And then, just like out of nowhere in my mind, I just started ripping them apart. What is wrong with you guys? You want me to help save the rainforest. You're telling me that I'm supposed to get this message out. I'm not getting any backup from you. When is this book going to be published so people can learn about what you're about? And I just started screaming all these emotional things like, where are you at in assisting, helping the world, so to speak. And And I was screaming it out to him, too, verbally. And then a calm telepathic message came back and said, your emotions are getting in the way of us getting the data.
And we assigned you an impossible mission. My God.
That's exactly right.
Listen, you don't have a lot of time.
Okay.
Wildcard line, I think it's Michael in Columbus, Ohio. You're on the air with Jim.
Thank you, Art. Hello, Mr. Sparks. How you doing?
Hi. Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Security officer in the middle of the night. I have two questions connecting. The first one is, you've been dealing with these beings now for 18, 20 years, and I've been listening to you over the night, and my major question is, how accessible are they? Do you know what planetary system they're coming from? How accessible are they to us and us to them? And the second part of my question is, since you've been in the ships, you've seen them and everything else, do you have any idea of the propulsion system that they're using to go back and forth, and how fast that area is? And I'll listen off on the radio to your...
All right. All right. First, the propulsion system. Do you have any of those kind of details?
The gentleman's name was Mark, Art? Was it Mark?
I think so. No, not anyway.
Okay, well, yeah,
propulsion system.
There's again, it's a time thing now. There's varying different types of ways that they go from point A to point B, and I can go into a more exacting detail, but I'll just be kind of outline it. Interdimensionally is one way. They use other dimensions to travel. When it comes as far as time is concerned, how long it takes, there's little to no time involved. Literally, they can be one side of the galaxy to the other in a split second. There's another way that I've seen them come around, and other people have been lucky enough with me, and I was just so thankful whenever several people are around me and there's a sighting, and I know it has a little bit or a lot to do. I try to be as humble as I can with this, with me, or an interaction with me. Another way they do is they beam like a light. This is one way. This is a little more primitive in my mind. This is the way one species does it. They beam something that looks like a light, that they can control the light like it does an end. It comes out first. So let's say they were, just hypothetically, I'll just use Mars. That light beam would come out first and stop. So it'd be a light that would stop, which is really weird. And you would see that for a few seconds, and then out the end would come a craft. Another way they go is, so the interdimensional thing is interesting because the laws of physics, as they naturally apply in our dimension, don't apply in other dimensions. So you can transverse the universe in no time flat. So I'm going to say interdimensionally, and something that looks, just again for time's sake, and I can get into more detail another time if you'd like, with something that beams out like a light, and then a few seconds later it pops out the end of it, a craft. And the craft is different colors as it's coming out the end. So it might be blue, it might be red, and it's sort of like orienting itself or orienting itself in this dimension, and then it'll turn white, and then it'll start reflecting light. And when it reflects light, they're here, and boom, they're gone.
All right. He asked you how accessible they are, and I guess that I'm not sure. I guess to you, for example, if you want interaction, do you get it?
There have been a few times in 18 years, and I can count these times on less fingers than I have on one hand, where I have gone through extremely, let's say, traumatic experiences where to be helpful for the phenomena and educate the public, and they within a few days they're here. But you got to understand the nature of the creature. Again, they're masters of deception. They're chameleons. They don't want to be predictable. They don't want you to be able to figure out when they're going to come and when they're going to go.
When you say masters of deception, that resonates with a lot of religious folks out there who say, I told you, masters of deception, they are the devil.
Well, meaning when I say that, as a chameleon, a chameleon can be you can throw a chameleon can be on a tree and he'll look like the tree bark. Whatever it takes. When I say deception, maybe I shouldn't be using that. I should change my verbiage. I'm not an English major.
I understand.
Yeah,
I'm clear on the difference.
Thank you.
First-time caller line, Teresa in Colorado. You're on with Jim.
Hello, Art. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi.
I didn't hear the whole show, so I might have missed this part. But I was curious if the aliens gave you any information about what we can do as individuals. It feels rather overwhelming, especially when our government is in denial or suppression about the whole subject.
Sure.
Boy, you're right about that. Yeah.
Sure. Well, again, if there's time to go into detail, but I'll try to make it right to the point. Amnesty is number one, meaning that an amnesty bill, meaning that there are those in the government, I know for a fact, that want to come out and come forward about the phenomena, about their relationship and interaction with these beings. The reason they can't come forth because, as we all know, there's been a lot of death, dying, and suffering to keep this stuff secret. We know that.
I know. You sound just like Stephen Greer now.
And coming forward would mean execution, in a sense. So an amnesty thing for them to come forward. As far as the environment is concerned, and I really didn't want to do this in a few seconds, but I understand the time thing, to lead to this so it'll make sense. There is a chance. And the chance clearly is the first place, and there is a plan. Art, if there's ever a time you'd like me back on to go into a little more detail with that and other things.
Oh yes.
But there is a plan for the first thing and foremost, an absolute must, is the rainforest. The rainforest. That's the heart, the lungs. That's the only thing left that's filtering, cleaning, so to speak. And I can get into that detail another time. And there's a way to preserve it. There's a way for the United States to get involved, the rest of the world, and there's a way for the military to be involved. There's a way for all the secret agencies to be involved.
Jim, what's happening with our rainforest right now is that they've built a road through it. Bad idea. Because now the poor people, and you can't blame them, are burning the rainforest down. They're planting crops. They get exactly 1 year of crops, maybe 2 at the most. Then they've got to go further down the road, burn more of the rainforest, and my God, Jim, you can see it from satellites in orbit. You can see the rainforest burning.
Well,
so
here's what you do. I know we're running out of time. I didn't mean to cut you. I'm sorry. Did you finish the statement? Just to give you a hint.
Well, I finished my statement. Yes.
Just a hint on one of the things that can be done. Why are those people? This is coming from again, let's say higher minds. I don't want to say bigger minds that can simulate more data than we can, and understand it and process it and come up with solutions. Why are those people doing that? You have to ask yourself. To survive.
Survival.
So, what would it take for them to be somewhere else? Money. Okay? So, if for example, silly, and you know what, and their business practices that were related to me seem so silly and stupid. Like I said, some of the things they talk about are so corny, but then I start thinking about it, and over weeks and months and sometimes years, and I go, man, that's the answer. Because let's say I'm a landlord in Central or South America, so to speak. I've got I control 500 million acres of rainforest. I'm just making something up, okay? Now, this is my land, okay? I'm the government, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever. What would be the wildest hopes and dreams that I think money that I can get for this property, this resource? Simple. Double what they want. Double it. Buy it. Double it.
Maybe we better start doing that. I don't know what it's going to take. It's going to take probably, Jim, some kind of crisis. Our government, I don't know about other governments of the world, but the American government operates from crisis to crisis to crisis. The problem is that when this environmental crisis gets to that point, that tipping point that the scientists say we're close to, it'll be too damn late. East of the Rockies, Donna, you're on, Donnie, you're on from Missouri with Jim.
Hi, Art. It's an honor to speak to you.
Thank you.
Jim, did you say earlier that you had spells of blanking out when you encountered the ETs?
Yes. Blackout periods would be when you're being pulled. Blackout periods would occur when I would be doing things that they absolutely didn't want me to do, and there was no other way to stop it but to, put me down, so to speak, which would be render me unconscious.
Well, is it possible that while you were out that they were doing experiments or trying to implant you with chips?
Oh, sure. Sure.
Well, that's not good.
No, that's not good. Have you been tested? Have you had any MRIs, that kind of thing done?
Well, I was having headaches that I thought were unrelated, or I was getting migraines at one period. I don't get them anymore, and I never got them most of my life, but there was like a 6-month period where I was literally getting migraines. I went in for an MRI, and when the physician came out that looked it over, he noticed that there were round balls or nodules in my nasal passage near, the right deep inside there, like 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And look, I don't get over dramatic. I don't get over scared. I don't panic. I don't this and that. He says, I'm not quite sure what it is. I think it's benign, but he says, I'd like to keep an eye on that just to see what they do, like to see if they grow or whatever. They just look a little strange to me. So this is what I came to answer that question. I don't care. I don't want anybody to find anything. If it meant something for people to look and it was really that important and I made a decision it was okay down the road, fine. It's not that important to me. It might help maybe for credibility purposes or what have you. For all I know, I can have 500 chips inside me. For all I know, I might only have 3, which, this physician saw through the MRI. So I don't really have a desire to do it, and I'm not super opposed to it. It's just that I kind of look at I'm listening to the message, and I'm not concerned about the messenger as so much as I am the message. If I can relate that and make sense.
You do. Gary in San Antonio, Texas. Time short. Jim Sparks is all yours.
Art, first time to talk with you. Always a pleasure to listen to you. Mr. Sparks, if those creatures are so concerned about this planet that they gave our government the technology to cure the world's ills to share with the rest of us, and our government, you say, won't do that, then why haven't those creatures given you the technology or someone else to share with us? And question 2, did those creatures instruct you that they created or modified our DNA? Thanks.
Okay.
Well, those are 2 big ones, and they're good ones. Hey, being pessimistic about them is absolutely a right to feel that way and think that way, and I'm with you that way. As far as that is concerned, that's what I don't want to be a self-proclaimed mouthpiece or spokesman for this thing, but it's turning out that the road seems to be leading in that direction. Yes, I do have information. Yes, I do have data. Yes, I do have plans. Yes, I do have their ideas. And this evening, looks like I'm not going to be able to get that across to you. But yes, there are plans for the average person.
All right, so you're aware of technology. You know, you have some of their technology.
Yeah, and I've seen people. I've seen another time, another show, but if it's possible, I can tell you about people, the human beings that were gifted with the ability to create something that, and I've seen it with my own eyes because of the contact I've had. I even worked for 6 months with a defense contractor, military defense contractor.
Okay, we'll hold that for another show.
And promised that I would never reveal who he was.
Okay, we'll hold that for another show. Stop there. DNA. Have they tampered with our DNA? That's almost got to be a yes or no question.
Yes, from day one. Yeah.
Yes, from day one.
From day one.
Jim, I don't know how to thank you for being here except to plug your book for you, and I'll sure do that. Buddy, thank you.
You're welcome, Art, and I really appreciate the experience with you. It's an honor, and I look forward to more.
We'll do it again, my friend. Good night.
Good night, Art.
That's Jim Sparks, 5 hours. It's a very rare thing that I'll do that, but ladies and gentlemen, this one justified it. The book is The Keepers, an alien message for the human race. I absolutely recommend you check it out. That man had a lot to say. Whew. What a night. My God, what a night. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just half the weekend. I'll see you tomorrow night from Manila in the Philippines. Night-night.